to the news at 10.
No, welcome to Slightly Mental Podcast. Thank you for coming and making a history with me, because it's the first time we're recording live, being here in my makeshift studio. Previous episodes happened online only, so it is history in making. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry I had to make you wear the headphones and ruin your beautiful hair, though, but...
The things I do.
We started talking from the fact that your voice is really nice and very pleasant on the mic. So I don't know, maybe we should record a podcast with some lullabies for adult people when you share stories for people to go to sleep calmly.
I listen to stories that help you go to sleep. There's an app, and you can choose whether you play music or whether you listen to stories. And occasionally I do listen to the story because it's quite nice. But I have to be careful I don't get too much into the story, because then it keeps me awake and I start creating the images in my head, and then that's it, then I'm awake.
Yeah. I do similar thing. Almost every night when I go to sleep, I watch a movie, but it has to be a movie that I've seen already a few times, because exactly what you say, you don't get into the story, it's just white nosy in the background, and you sort of fall asleep.
Yeah.
So what kind of stories do you listen to?
Well, do you know the last one I listened to was a little bit bizarre, but it was okay. And it was like a space story, and it talked about like the universe and the stars and how they all collided. But it was in this really calming voice.
Yeah.
And it did actually work.
Another thing is David Attenborough. So when you listen to his voice, it's very calming, and he talks about animals, and you just drift away listening to his voice, like being on a cloud. It's lovely.
Literally, could listen to him saying anything. You could read his shopping list.
Yeah, definitely.
And you'd be like, oh, I think I'll have a little nap.
I need some sugar today and some flour. And you're like, talk to me. Lovely. So Sam, you're an L&D manager.
I am.
I'm really curious, how did you get to that point? How was that journey like?
I kind of fell into it, really. When I went to uni, it was never something probably that I even knew about. So I went to uni and I did a degree in psychology and human biology. Obviously, the human biology element I don't use hugely anymore. Mm-hmm. The psychology element I do use, and a little bit of the human biology about the way that, the kind of receptors in our brains respond to certain things. So it does play a part in what I do. But when I left uni, I went and kind of worked with young adults that had kind of additional needs and stuff. And I was young and naive and thought I could change the world, thought maybe wanted to be a social worker. But I very quickly found out that there's a lot of red tape around all of that. I kind of found myself quite frustrated all of the time. And I also got physically attacked a few times as well. Yeah. And I thought, I'm not entirely sure this is for me. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I'd got a job in a pub as well at the time. And then I kind of just fell into place into kind of pub management from there. So I was quite young as a pub manager. And then a little bit in kind of the operations of pub management. And I fell into training because somebody asked me if I could just go along and help some of the trainers with some training. And I absolutely loved it. And then there was the offer of a role in training. So I kind of jumped at the chance, and I've never looked back, really. And I've obviously kind of developed a lot, and I've got various bits of paper. I mean, bits of paper don't really mean a lot to me. They give you knowledge, but that's about it, really. Mm-hmm. It's about how do you apply the knowledge. And so, I've just kind of grown, learnt more, had lots of experiences that helped me become wiser in what I do. And I can say hand on heart that I am one of those people that really enjoys what they do as well. We all have a bad day, don't get me wrong. We're like, why do we even bother? For God's sake, why don't people get it? But I genuinely love what I do. And I'm not about kind of ruling the world or changing the world. For me, it's about if I can give somebody a tool or a technique or give them a little bit of extra confidence that they can take away and use in their everyday, that's going to make them the best version of themselves and give them, that added confidence from, implementing that knowledge, then I'm kind of like, job done.
Yeah. Nice.
Because I always think it's what knowledge is one thing and competence is one thing, but it absolutely is about how do people think and feel as well about that knowledge. What is the confidence that comes with that? Because we all know where maybe we've self-taught ourselves something. My example always is Microsoft Excel is like my worst nightmare. And I've only ever self-taught myself. I've never been on an official course or anything. I've watched some videos. And there's been times when I've done something and somebody said, why are you doing it like that?
Yeah.
I'll be like, well, I didn't know there's any other way. So arguably I was competent because I could get to the end result. But was I confident? No, because it's taken me a long time to get there and I didn't always get it right as well. So I think it's really interesting how people approach that whole learning piece around. It isn't just about knowledge and knowledge transfer. It's the confidence that comes with it too. It's really important.
I think it's great that what you said is that you enjoy what you do. I think the sad story is with a lot of people that I've met and a lot of intelligent, smart, cool, really interesting people that they do something that they don't actually enjoy. And a lot of people just go to work on Monday. And if you look on Facebook, you see posts with the cat with a sad face. Oh, it's working Monday again. And just going through the whole week to wait for Saturday so then you can get drunk or go, hiking for a day or two and you go back to this reality. I feel like we could all have a better life if we choose to invest our time at work into something that we enjoy. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to be rich or have a business, but I think something that you will really enjoy, certain skills, like you hate Excel. I do a lot of data analysis and I actually enjoy it. Because for me, it paints a story and I like figuring things out. So when I see some numbers that don't actually want to work together, I'm trying to find out what's going on, why, and it sort of makes my brain tick. For you, it's probably the best cringe ever. the biggest cringe ever.
It's interesting though. I think sometimes inevitably we will all do something within our job role, no matter how much we love our job, that we don't particularly love. And I always try and reframe it as to, but how can I make the best of it? So the bit about Excel, I'd really hate to get all the numbers together, crunch the numbers, create, that bit is my worst nightmare. But actually, if somebody presented, a set of graphs or a set of data for me that I could take and then create a narrative around that to understand the kind of themes or what else was needed, then I'm really happy to do, really happy, comfortable to do that. And I think that's the important thing is sometimes you're not always going to love everything you do, but how can you make it more aligned to the things that you like, the things that you do. So suddenly it feels less of a chore.
Yeah.
But it's still okay to say it's not your thing.
Yeah,
because
totally.
We all bring something different to the party.
When you say that, I have a feeling like we're on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to Excel, for example. Because I actually like that part where I get to figure the numbers out and present them in a way that it creates a story when people who look at the numbers go, it actually makes sense. And I like the way you presented the data, and I sound like a geek.
Wow.
But there we go. I do enjoy that part.
It's your
and
thing.
it looks like you actually enjoy looking at data that is presented really nicely. Yeah.
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 And I think that's the piece when people come say, I want to develop or I want some growth or I'm not quite sure kind of what I want to branch out into. I always say, it's really important to take some time to think about what do I enjoy? Yeah. What are my strengths as well? Because I'm a massive believer in play to your strengths, which sometimes sounds a bit strange because it's kind of like you're all about development, Sam. But actually, if you play to your strengths, you are more likely to be successful.
Yeah.
You are more likely to enjoy it as well. And you're more likely to feel that achievement. So it's good to recognise those areas of development, but play to your strengths as much as you possibly can. And I always say, do something that you do feel very aligned to, something that you think you've got a way of contributing to what you do, and whether that contribution is to support others or whether it's about the kind of achievement and satisfaction they get for you, or sometimes even it's about things being aligned to your values as well. And often I think people do tend to fall into their kind of job roles because,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's a really tough thing to go, oh, what am I going to do with my life? What's my job going to be? You know, most of us fall into those job roles. But when you're in that job role, if something doesn't feel right, it's probably time to have that little conversation with yourself that says, what's not right about it? You know, why is it I'm not getting that sense of satisfaction, or why do I not feel fulfilled in what I do? And once you identify that, it helps you understand actually maybe what would give me that. And then it's a whole nother question about how brave you feel to take that leap if you've done something for quite some time as well.
Yeah.
Because lots of people fall into the habit of what they do for a living and think, oh, I couldn't possibly do anything else. Yeah. And I think we had a little conversation, Sam, about the fact that, you know, I've worked in a number of businesses with learning and development, but actually the business has been quite different.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not necessarily about the particular kind of business that you work in, but it's about the knowledge that you've got and the skills that you've got and how do you take them somewhere else. It doesn't have to be like for like. As human beings, we always doubt ourselves a little bit, and we go to I'll stay in my nice safe place. I'll do what's comfortable. Oh, God, it's not my favourite thing, but I'll just stay there because actually I know what I'm doing and it's okay. So it's quite brave to branch out from that, but definitely worth it if you're in a place where you're doubting, you know, how much you're enjoying what you do.
I think what you said, that you recommend people focus on what they enjoy doing. I think that's a really good nugget of wisdom in there, because I feel like that's the way of getting to the place where you do what you enjoy. Because if you follow what you're interested in, sooner or later it might take some time. And I think that's that's often an obstacle for us as well. When I think it's going to take me a year or two. Yeah, but then you get to do what you really enjoy for the rest of your life, or for another 10 or 15 or whatever years.
Yeah. And it's often a relatively small chunk of time in the grand scheme of your lifetime as well. But you can really live in that moment, can't you? And there's a security that comes with living in that, you know, I'll just think about this year, or actually 3 years. Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Let me just stay in my safe place, because in that 3 years, I'm going to have things that are a little bit different. I'm maybe not going to be as comfortable with them. They're going to challenge me. And so there is that kind of courageousness that comes with saying, I recognise that this is going to make a real change to my life. And I think we all do it to an extent. I think some people are, you know, are more willing to be courageous than others, really.
Somebody said that success is doing something that you enjoy and finding somebody to pay you for it. And I think that's like a perfect description of perfect life in my opinion. Obviously there are different things in life, you know, friendships and relationships and family and all that, but from the perspective of professional life, I think that's like a perfect setup. So doing something that you enjoy and finding somebody who will pay you for it. That's it. Do you have a morning routine?
Oh, it's a really good question, Sam. Do I have a morning routine?
Something with crystals, maybe?
And I pick out the crystal for today. I have got a lapis lazuli on today for confidence. I'm not always a creature of habit, really. But saying that, I probably just jump out of bed straight in the shower. I'm not one of these people that kind of says, right, I'll have a cup of coffee in bed before I get up and stuff. I'm like, right, if I'm getting up, I'm getting up. Yeah. Let's not mess about at this. Get up, jump in the shower, get ready, and I'm kind of ready for the day. I am notoriously bad, though, sometimes at not being as organised as I could be in the morning. I'm like, where did I put my glasses?
Yeah.
I thought I chucked something in my bag that I needed for today, but I'm looking in it again. I'm like double checking I've put my phones in. So it can feel a little bit like, come on, Sam, and get it together in the mornings. Yeah. And I like to try and organise at night. So I'll choose what I'm going to wear the next day, put it out ready and stuff, pack my bag. But there's always something that I'm faffing about in the morning without fail. And I'm like, oh, look at the time. I should have been gone like 10 minutes ago. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not really a creature of habit, but yeah, I kind of can faff a bit.
I think talk about morning routines and stuff like that. It became more and more popular on social media. And I think it's great to have a morning routine if it helps you to kick off your day, to do something that puts you in the right mind space, for example. But sometimes you get to the place where people have a morning routine that takes an hour, 2 or 3. And I think that gets to the place where you have diminishing returns, because if you don't do that routine, you can't function. So it becomes a crutch rather than something that helps you.
Yeah.
When I went through my crisis, one of the things that I used to do, which a lot of people frowned upon and say is stupid, is every morning when I woke up, I would listen to a motivational speech on YouTube every single morning. And it sounds silly, but when you listen and you have a lot of negative self-talk, it helps you to start thinking about yourself and about life in a different perspective. So I would listen to people like Tony Robbins. What was the other guy? Jim Rohn, for example. And one nugget of wisdom from him was, don't be a follower, be a student. So always question advice that you get from other people and so on. So I think we can all find something in that routine that helps us kickstart the day. But I'm just like you. If I, especially on Saturday or Sunday, if I stay in bed for a bit too long, if I don't get up, I feel like I'm chasing my tail, like I'm chasing the day, and I don't feel quite connected to reality for the rest of the day. It's a really weird feeling, but that's how I feel. So if I wake up, I need to get out of bed and get moving, I need a little mission. Yeah, totally.
I think, Sam, that thing about kind of listening to something that motivates you, it's different for different people as well, isn't it? Some people will, listen to music and sing away because that's what fills their soul with
you don't
joy.
want to hear me singing. Trust me.
I can't sing either. So,
my neighbours would move out.
But I think it is that bit of, it's about what is it that works for you.
Yeah.
And that whole piece sometimes of those kind of hearing those motivational words is that bit that actually it's that reinforcement of positive stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to get lost in, that less positive stuff. I used to watch the news while I got ready. I didn't so much watch it, but put it on the telly and get ready and just... But actually, I got to a stage when I was like, can't do it because there was so much bad stuff that I started my day off. And like a couple of times I'd be like, oh, got to put my mascara back on because I've had a little cry at that, or, you know. And it's that bit about how do you want to start the day that's going to put you in the best place. So for some people, it might be, actually, I'm going to stay in bed for a quarter of an hour with a cup of tea and just chill. For others, it might be I want a little chat with this person that, is next to me or whatever to kind of set me off. Others don't even want to speak to anybody. Yeah. And that's fine too. It's just about what's right for you as an individual and how's it going to make you feel. And I have a very dear friend, and she gave me one of the best bits of advice. And she said, find the joy in the everyday, Sam, because it's really easy to miss all the great stuff. And there's a little bit of that, I think, in the way that you set the day up. If you can find the joy in the morning in something, whether it's you hear the birds sing, or you had a great journey into work, or some great song came on the radio that you'd forgotten about and you listened to. And I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I'd ever been given. And I like to think of myself as quite an optimistic, quite joyful person. We all have our moments, guaranteed. I'm sure you've heard me have the odd whinge or two, Sam. But
I won't tell.
It was really powerful for me to just take that moment to go, where's the joy in the everyday? And sometimes when I'm having a little bit of a bad day, I just hear those words from my friend echo in, and I think, what's the joy today? Do you know what? 9 out of 10 times I can find something. But it's really easy to forget to do that when we're so busy and caught up with everything else and caught up in other people's drama, or we're worrying about that deadline, or what am I going to have for tea and I need to go shopping and I don't want to. Yeah. We get lost in all of that, don't we?
I resonate with what you said about the news. I used to wake up every morning. It was back in the days where I used to smoke, so years and years ago, and drink coffee. So I would go and make myself some coffee, go back to bed and watch news, and then I would start getting ready every single morning. And you don't think about that, but only when I stopped that, after my crisis, it turned everything upside down. But only after that I realized, how could I have a positive day when I open my eyes, I turn on my telly and I look at news? And there's never anything positive. It's just somebody got killed again, there's some wars, there's this, and obviously it's important to know what's going on in the world. But if you only put negative messaging in your brain, you can't expect to have a positive day and go about, and having positive outlook. But when you do that, it's a habit and you don't realize. Only when you stop. What was your first question when you came into my place today? What did you ask about?
Your weekend?
No, what was missing in my place? You asked about the telly, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Sorry, yeah. I said,
okay.
Where's your telly?
Yeah, exactly. So
I was shocked. I was like, hang on a minute. Like, everybody's living room has a telly. Something's not quite right in here.
Yeah, I got rid of it as well, and never went back. So that was a big moment when I realized I'm not watching anything, but I'm watching crap because it's always on. Yeah. And I found myself going, I'm just going to have some dinner and I'm going to go to the gym. And you start watching Emmerdale or EastEnders or whatever. Something is on the telly and you get caught in the story and you want to watch until the end. And when it ends, you're going to go to the gym. But there's another program that you want to watch. I'm like, okay, after that, I'm going to the gym. And then it's 10 p.m. and it's time to go to bed. Yeah. And I'm like, this is madness. I need to do something about it. So I got rid of my TV, which was obviously like a guy. We love toys. So that was my prized possession that I bought for myself one Christmas. But I got rid of it and yeah, it's great.
I think as well, the whole kind of how you're very much distracted, like with things like television and, sometimes you don't watch it with purpose, do you? You literally
yeah.
Oh, what's on next? And I think as well, that's really easy to forget to have some of the conversations that you can have. There's somebody in the room with you maybe. You just minded to watch a telly like this. You don't even speak to each other or you make comment about it. It's easy to forget that. Or you don't phone a friend because you're so engrossed in what's in the telly, when actually having that conversation with somebody probably would make a much, better impact than mindlessly watching the telly. And I am guilty of watching telly and scrolling through social media.
Oh my God.
Every now and then I'm like really strict with myself and I like come home and I say, right, I'm just going to leave my phones on the kitchen table because I can so easily get just caught into, and I couldn't even tell you what I'd kind of scrolled through sometimes and stuff.
Little hits of dopamine. Right?
Yeah, but there we go. If anybody said to me, all I did was watch telly and I'd be like, oh, did you? I'll be like, oh, actually. Yes, that's me.
And it's so tricky because you watch 15-second videos, but you get so into it that 2 hours just go by, you don't know where, and you go, oh my God. And I'm the same. And I find myself sometimes playing something on YouTube or watching a movie, and instead of watching, I scroll my phone, and then I realize this is so dumb. I wanted to watch this movie, and I'm scrolling my phone. It's really, really addictive. It's really addictive.
It is.
I came across a question that I asked you. So I came across this question on social media. It was in the realm of dating, but I think it's a really interesting question. What is your favorite unimportant thing about you?
Unimportant thing about me?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I'm going to cough again as well, sorry.
That's okay.
Unimportant thing about me. Wow, Sam, that's a real thought-provoking question.
It is.
Most unimportant thing about me.
Believe me or not, but I really tried hard to put some questions
it's a really good
together
question.
That would be interesting.
Most unimportant thing. Oh. I might need to reflect a bit on that. What was your answer, Sam?
If you want, we can come back to that. You know what? I actually started thinking about it when I was preparing for your conversation with you. And I think the first thing that came to my mind was that I'm interested in almost everything. I have that sort of childlike curiosity, and sometimes it may sound silly, but yeah, it might not be my thing. For example, I have a friend who's a photographer. She's an amazing photographer. I haven't got a clue how the camera works or how to take a good picture. But when she talks about a session or a photography, I'm listening. I want to know how it works. What do you do? Why do you have a light in there? Why did you tell your model to stand like this? Why did you choose this location and all that? I really want to know how stuff works. So I think that's something, because for other people it's like, why? It sounds so tiring. Why would you want that? So I think for a lot of people it might be unimportant, but for me it's something that it's a really big part of my personality. Yeah,
I've got a different perspective on that. For me, I think curiosity is one of the greatest tools in our toolkit. Curiosity helps us to understand. It helps us to get to root causes. It helps us to have more of awareness. It encourages us to grow. It
helps with Excel as well.
I haven't quite worked that one out yet, but yeah, I always say curiosity is a great bit of kit to have in your toolkit. And you think about children. Children are so curious, and we kind of take that away from them. Stop asking why. You don't need to understand about why. And we kind of take it away. And as adults then, I think also we think we need to work everything out by ourselves when we take that curiosity away. When actually, that phrase of two heads is better than one surely is, because different perspectives, different ways of working around things. Take our example of you be my go-to for an Excel spreadsheet. Instead of trying to work it all out by myself and do it myself, that element of curiosity and coming to you and saying, can you talk me through this? Show me how to do it. Help me to understand how I might do it next time. Adds real value, So it's interesting that you think that's the kind of unimportant thing about you. Again, it's that perspective. Everyone's perspective is different.
Yeah, definitely. It's valuable for me and it's important for me. But it's probably unimportant for other people. Or it's not like a key thing that somebody would ask. I personally, I don't like when somebody does something for me. I hate when somebody sort of faffs around me or do something for me. If I don't know how to do something and you're going to help me, show me how to do it so I can do it myself next time. I do not like when somebody just do something for me and I really don't know how to do it the next time. I hate that.
So maybe what's unimportant about me is it might be that I do love useless facts. So, like random facts.
Okay.
I am the queen of random facts.
Okay. What's your favorite fact?
Oh, I can't pick one, I'm sure. But sometimes, when people start a conversation about something random and I'll be like, did you know?
Yeah.
Somebody said something about kind of language and stuff, because that's one of my favourite areas. I think it's fascinating how we use language and the way it's perceived and stuff. And somebody said something about the language that you use, and then I was like, did you know it, your brain receptors respond to like different words in different ways and things like that, and they kind of looked at me as if to say, okay. And I was like, I just know some random facts, and quietly took myself off.
So you're a good person to have on your team for a pub quiz then?
As long as it's not sport.
Yeah.
Because I'm rubbish at sport.
Me too.
But if you want to know about, I don't know, mythological gods or the kind of Earth's tectonic plates or, what a particular flower species is, then I'm probably your woman in that occasion.
I'll remember.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at pub quiz, so I always need some good help.
Sport, and I'm probably TV I'm not so great at. So yeah. Those sorts of things.
Okay, so language and Greek gods and
geography, biology, bit of kind of nature questions. Crystals, obviously, is my forte. Anything spiritual.
Okay.
I'm your woman.
Cool, I'll remember that. So you told me a story how you got to the point of being an L&D manager. Was there a key sort of breakthrough moment in your life? Something maybe happened that you realized that had a big impact on you?
I think I've always been quite a kind of people person. So I guess, I've always wanted to do a role that involves people. I guess when I've been in leadership roles, I have taken really seriously the impact that I have on my team. So, that leadership piece isn't just about achieving results per se through your team, but it's also about how do you understand them as individuals? Because it's really easy to say, right, we all do everything in the same way because that's consistent. This is the way I want it done because that is my preference in that sense. But I think when I first went into leadership, I was a little bit like, oh, this is a big deal. This is a tough gig, and there's a lot kind of people that I'm responsible for. So I went to that place of, don't think about, I've got a team of X amount of people. Think about this is this person as an individual. What can they bring to the party? One of my favourite phrases. What can they bring to the party? But how can I support them to bring that to the party? Or how can I support them if there's something else that they want to develop as well? And I think it just made me think, even though I was very much about individuals and, kind of bespoke in the way that I had those kind of interactions with individuals, it made me much more mindful and thoughtful about the conversations that I had, which I think helped in the whole of what I do as well. And then when I became an insights practitioner, that kind of upped that little bit, because there's that whole understanding of our different personality types and how people respond. So I could kind of further tailor that as well based on a little bit of kind of psychology and science. But yeah, I think that's really important, is remember that we are all very different and we all are unique. And while there might be some general stuff that fits us all, there's nothing better than really understanding an individual to get the best from them, not only because they may drive your results, but also that so they can drive their own results as well. So, yeah.
I totally agree with you. So what do you think is in the heart of the L&D in the workplace, or rather what should be in the heart of the L&D?
So I'll go back to the whole bit about kind of knowledge, competence, confidence, and behaviours is the biggest one for me, because you can provide all the training tools that you want to. You can give online courses, you can give workshops, you can suggest things that people can read, etc. But it's really about how do you tell that kind of story of the knowledge in a way that people can connect with and relate to in their everyday. And for me, that's something I always strive to do, is how can I get an individual to see, how is this relevant to me in my world? And what can I do with it as well? And I think that's really, really key, because I can stand and deliver courses all day long, but unless I make it really relevant and get people to connect with that, we've all wasted our time, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, personally, just like you, I absolutely love teaching. I think it's one of those things that if you try it, and either it's your thing and you love it, or it's not your thing. And it was really my thing. And I think it goes back to being able to present something in engaging and interesting way. And when you see a group of people sitting in the classroom or standing or whatever, when you see that they are interested, you know that you hit the nail on the head. And it's so satisfying and so rewarding that you get to pass on some knowledge in a way that people are really interested, especially coming through school, where probably we all have had a few teachers where they hadn't had, they didn't have that in them to interest pupils. And like I went through school, I was not interested in anything. I couldn't bear going to school. I just sort of slipped through. And I feel like partially it's my fault, but partially I was just, most teachers couldn't make it interesting for me. That's why if I deliver a course, I always try to make it relevant to people, interesting as well, just as you said. And I think it's very rewarding, even though it's very tiring as well.
It is tiring, Sam. And it's interesting because, I've been in L&D for a lot of years now, but I still have those moments when at the end of a workshop I go, did I give them everything they needed? I still have that moment when I'm like, did it quite work in that right way? So I still, after all this time, have that moment, a little bit of doubt, because I feel like I'm in a place of responsibility.
Yeah.
That actually these people have invested their time. They perceive me as an expert. We can argue that point. And so I feel it's a big responsibility to kind of, make the content connect with them. But also, I've got a room full of very different people. And so there's a little bit of, to one person, what they want to get from it is very different from the person that's sat next to them as well. And how do you do that in a way that everybody feels included and gets something from it? And yeah, I'll do a little bit of reflection of like, oh. And then I do ask for feedback. I think feedback's really important.
Yeah, I agree.
It's okay what goes on in my head, but actually what's the reality of the situation for the people that were in the room too. So that feedback's really key for me to understand that. Yeah. And luckily, no one has ever given me really horrendous feedback.
I can't imagine. I think you have a very natural talent for teaching and presenting and really getting people interested in what you're trying to teach. I don't know if you found that as well, but I found myself, whenever I teach something, I'm quite critical of myself afterwards, and I think, I didn't say this, or this should have been differently, and this and that. But I found out that those courses where I judge myself the harshest, usually I got the best feedback from people. Yeah. And it's so bizarre. And you think, I fucked this up. That went really badly. And then I got the feedback forms back, because like majority that I taught was mental health first aid. So the feedback comes back and it's like 5 stars, 4.5. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. It was very personable, this and that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
I think generally as human beings, we're always much more comfortable to go to the place of what could I have done better? What did I do wrong? And there's absolutely a place for that, Sam, because you've got to be aware maybe of sometimes when you haven't done something so great. Yeah. But we will always go to that really kind of overcritical place often. I mean, there is the odd exception where people think, they're absolutely amazing when they're not. There is those exceptions, but by our very nature, I think we always seek out what could be better, what did I do wrong. Yeah. We don't often, first place is, let's just give myself a little bit of a tap on the back, because actually there was some great stuff that I did today. And now let's go and look at the not so great stuff. And I think we just fall into that trap. It's just the way, it's a bit like L&D, there's always that real focus on how can we improve people? And that's really key. It is really key. But remember, some stuff just isn't their bag. And you know what? Sometimes you just got to say, it's okay if this isn't your bag. Just keep on with the stuff that you're good at.
Absolutely. We're going back to the beginning of the conversation. Just focus on the things that you enjoy doing and that you're good at. So what things, in your opinion, businesses can do to develop their employees?
So I think there's a couple of things, really. I think it's really important that businesses focus on their values and living their values as a business, because there's often great behaviours associated with that. Think about where we work, Sam. That value of creative is really great at encouraging people to think bigger, think that kind of blue sky. Problem solving, often the values are a really strong anchor for supporting development, where a business has a set of values on the wall but necessarily doesn't live it, and there's that disconnect. I think we miss a trick, where that happens. I think it's about encouraging people to understand that development is about, you must sit in a workshop, or you must read a book. It's about what opportunities are there in the everyday. I am a massive believer that you can have a really effective coaching conversation in 10 minutes.
Oh, definitely.
It doesn't have to be, let's sit down, let's take an hour and a half about it.
Let me play this relaxing music. Let me light up a candle.
And there's a time and a place for that type of coaching conversation. But I think we just miss some tricks. And I think that's about honesty as well.
Yeah.
So I think to enable really meaningful development, sometimes there are some honest conversations to be had. And that might be about, are you in the right space to think about growth and development at the moment? So sometimes people think, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do this, but they're not always in that right space for it. And so they don't succeed. I think it's about being realistic of your expectations of yourself as well. The one bit that I said earlier at the beginning of our conversation about what matters to you, what do you feel you'll be aligned to when it comes to that growth. So just how do you have more of those growth conversations in the everyday? What tends to happen is half-year review. Let's roll out the half-year review and talk about all the things that you should develop in. We should be having conversations in the everyday, whether it's a one-to-one once a month that says, tell me what you did great today.
Yeah.
What skills, what skills did you pull on for that? What behaviours did you use to get that great result? Were there any moments that on reflection you think you should have a little word with yourself and go, oh, what could I have done better? Or why did that impact people in that way? We're so focused on results, and rightly so, because we're a business and it's really important that we focus on results. But that 10-minute conversation could mean the next month's results are even better.
Yeah.
And there's a cumulative effect that comes from that. Now, don't get me wrong, I still want people in my day-long workshops. That supports.
Go people.
That really supports that whole learning experience. But I think, how do we get people less nervous about the whole, if I engage in learning, it's a really serious commitment. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, there is a commitment, but, it's going to take a lot of time. There's a lot to think about. And have I got the capability? They're important questions, but actually, what can I do and how can I make it part of my everyday? And I think if we all did a little more of that, the world would be a smarter place.
Yeah, that's a quote. I think this is why apprenticeships are so awesome, because not only the business has responsibility to carve out the time for you, but also you're learning things that are relevant to your job or potentially to the next step in your job, hopefully.
Yeah.
But also you get involved in the things that develop the skills that you're learning. So if you do a 2-year apprenticeship, at the end, you don't just get the paper like after university or high school, but you have no practice. You get the knowledge and the practice at the same time. That's why I think they're so brilliant.
I always say, if you think about the situation of university, you get the piece of paper. There's nothing you can practically put on your CV as I have done this and this has been the outcome. With an apprenticeship, at the end of an apprenticeship, you absolutely can do that.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you will talk about, I learned this is how I implemented it, this was the impact that I got, this is the impact on the wider business, on the team, on individual as well. And it makes me smile because when people start an apprenticeship, it's almost like they're surprised at how relevant it is to their kind of day job. And even though that's a really important part that I emphasise when people start thinking about apprenticeships, there's always that bit when you check in, 2 months in, how's it going? Oh, yeah, it's really relevant to what I'm doing. And there's always like that element of surprise in their voice. It still makes me smile every time I hear it. But it's invaluable because you learn something, you implement it. It's that sticky learning, isn't it? It stays in your brain. But also then you evaluate, you get feedback. So it becomes a much richer experience than just reading something and thinking, well, I'll give it a go and see what happens. You get a lot more from it and you're more likely to embed that learning so that when you're in a similar situation, suddenly there'll be that little place in the back of your brain that says, oh, we've done this because we've not just read about it. We've done something practical and we had a result. And we evaluated it because that's what you do as part of your apprenticeship. So suddenly it really supports that recall element of it as well, which I think, is that added bonus. If you asked me what I did at university, I would struggle to tell you all the different modules that I did,
That's exactly what I had in my mind. That's exactly what I wanted to say, that we probably forget most of the things, 80, maybe 90% of things that we have learned in school, because something that is not relevant to what we do now, and something that we haven't practiced. It was just something that you had to learn, pass the exam, and then move on, and most likely forget. That's why what we are talking about, the apprenticeships are so great, because it's so relevant to what you do and what you will be doing in the future. You're also a big, I don't want to say big fan, but you're a big supporter of the insights discovery. You teach insights discovery. What is it all about?
So I think the reason why I like insights discovery so much is it focuses on there are 4 energy colours. With each energy colour comes certain kind of behaviours and characteristics and the way that we do things. I really enjoy the kind of simplicity of the language that we use. And I think it's really impactful in the examples that we use for insights as well. It's a psychometric tool. So, people are a little bit skeptical sometimes. I like to remind them it's based on science because it's based on Carl Jung's theory. So it's a psychometric tool. But I think it's just that whole emotion and intelligence piece. It brings it to life in a way that people, again, that connection bit that I talk about, in a way that people can easily connect with. And I frequently see real light bulb moments in the room as we start to talk about the different behaviours, the different characteristics, the way that people like to communicate and interact, or the way they like to work on projects, or, even the way they think about things, or, what their desk looks like and that type of thing. Suddenly you can see people going, oh,
It makes a lot of sense.
It all makes sense now. And often where there's that person that they've got that real blocker with, there comes that moment when they go, oh, it's not about me, is it really?
Yeah.
It's just that we think and we feel and we do in very different ways from each other. And so it feels quite alien that that's the way you would think about something when I am so grounded in the way that I think this is the right way and this is the way that works. So suddenly you have that moment of going, okay, maybe I need to cut them a little bit of slack, or maybe I need to think about the way that I approach things and the way that, I enter into those conversations as well. And I always say that the kind of tool is about understanding what's the win-win for everybody. It's not about changing who you are, because it's really important that you really embrace and celebrate the unique you and your very authentic, true self. But it's about understanding that sometimes people need different things from us. And it's okay just to kind of adapt some of our ways to connect with other people and vice versa. Because if I get the win out of it and you get the win out of it, then why the hell wouldn't we? And I think the tool, the language that we use is very relatable. So back to my principles of what makes good L&D, they're very relatable. People connect with them. And I think it really encourages really honest and objective conversations in the room as we work through the day as well. And that in itself is very powerful, not just the tool, but suddenly people being a little bit more open and a little bit more willing to think about a different perspective, about how they may be perceived, but they'd never even considered that some of their behaviours would be, perceived in that way. So, I find it's fascinating for me. I never tire of the tool, and I've done some of the others like Myers-Briggs and DISC. There's a couple of others, but I kind of always go back to insights just because of that beauty of connection of it as well.
Because you have that lovely circle in the middle
and
of
I
the
do
floor.
have a beautiful visual mat that I love everybody to jump on. So, I lead with that earth green and that sunshine yellow, and that sunshine yellow loves that kind of let's get up and move and involvement as well. So absolutely feeds into that.
Yeah, well, we laugh about that all the time. But when I've done my insights discovery and I go to the room and I saw that big circle, my first thought was, "Ooh, we are starting a cult."
And sometimes it can feel a bit like that, Sam. I guess if you think about when I joined the business just over 2 years ago, I think that there'd been maybe 1 or 2 half-day workshops because it was kind of something that was new. And if you think about where we were then to where we are now, it's quite common language in our business. People use the language in a way that can be very objective, I will add a caveat to this, that sometimes there is a risk that people want to pigeonhole people into their colour energies, or maybe focus more on their bad day rather than their good day. And that's a real risk, and it's just about calling that out when you hear it as well, to say, let's be respectful in the way that we view the different colour energies and what they bring. But it's really nice because it almost brings a safe place for people to talk about some of the challenging stuff as well as some of the good stuff. And it just feels like it's less personal because you relate to the colour energies rather than that person as an individual as well. And that's the other bit I like about it. My Earth Green Harmony loves that element of it as well.
I've noticed that some people even put their energy colors on the bottom of their email with their signature. And I feel in the beginning, maybe when I got into that, maybe I was a little bit skeptical, because almost like, oh, you don't want everybody to know about you. But now I look at it from the perspective of somebody showing what is the sort of preference, it's a little bit like a little nugget of wisdom about your personality. And if I look at that, it gives me a little bit of information on maybe what is the best way to communicate with that person. Because if you talk to somebody who's who's red, you want to be straight to the point. So tell them the facts. This is what we can do, this is what we cannot do. And if you talk to somebody who's maybe green, you maybe want to create a bit more story around it, maybe talk about the impact on people and stuff like that. So I really like it. So before we get any further, can you tell me what are for people who never heard about it, what are the sort of 4 energy colors?
Yeah, so we have our fiery red, and the important thing to say is we all have a good day and a bad day. I always say bad days when we overplay our good day strengths and they flip into those bad day behaviours. So that's a really important part.
I was very grumpy yesterday. I don't know why. Seriously.
Something set you off.
Yeah, something did. And it was weird because I was thinking, why am I so grumpy? And the grumpiness turned into anger. And I'm like, why? I understand a lot about that, and I know that when you're angry, you're just punishing yourself or something else, whatever. But I'm like, why am I angry? So
and you become less rational.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as you experience those types of emotions, I talk about this in the Insights workshop. When you start to experience those emotions that are less positive ones, we start to become less rational. And when we start to become less rational, we can take ourselves down a very long road.
Absolutely. And I feel like once you get to the bad place and you become irrational, it snowballs and little things add up, and it sort of grows, and you find yourself at a place where you just like, you drive home and you just want to drive into everybody. Like, obviously not, but so you can get out of control. Sorry, because I stopped you. So we have the red.
So there's the 4 energy colours. So we have the fiery red. So good day, they are very driven, they're very results focused, they're about real quality, they're very assertive, they kind of really know their mind and really want to be successful as well. Their bad day can be that kind of overbearing, kind of almost a little bit like people are fearful of them, a little bit, unapproachable, a little bit kind of blinkered, not prepared to take other people's perceptions on as well. So good day, really great, because they are getting those results and they're making excellent results, and they're encouraging other people towards excellence as well. Then we have our sunshine yellow. And it's no surprises that when you start to think of the colours and the words you associate with them, they connect in that way. So they're all about that kind of real visionary, really creative. They love people to join in with them. The fun bus is their place to be, really. And they want to take people along. They love to be surrounded by people. And they really like being centre of attention. So
a bit more flamboyant kind of people.
They are.
Yeah.
If there's a loud voice in the room, probably is a sunshine yellow. They don't like to be constrained. They're really about that flexibility and that agility and that ability to move outside the box. The bad day side of that, however, is they can absolutely do your head in, because they can be so over the top, so energetic, really kind of hasty and indiscreet and just all over the place. Nothing gets finished. You don't quite know what's going on. The goalpost change. There's just general chaos in bad day for sunshine yellow, but they're in their own happy world of chaos, so they're unoblivious of what's going on around them. Yeah, I think it sounds quite joyous in some respects, but that says something about my energy colours. And then we have our earth green. So our earth green are very much about that kind of holistic way of thinking. They're very people orientated. They will always ask the question of how does that impact the people that are involved. They're very good at that kind of harmonious element of creating relationships and supporting other people with the relationships, that kind of coaching element as well, and just kind of nurturing people too. The bad day side of this, and this is very much Sam on a bad day, is they can be intensely stubborn.
I think it's both of us. I think we're both high green. That's my major color.
Yeah, so it can be really stubborn, dig their heels in. They're very values orientated people. So if somebody does something that is really kind of against their values, they will react quite strongly. Yeah. Now they won't shout and they won't scream about it, but what they'll do is they'll do that passive aggressive thing when they think, right, well, if that's the way you want to play it, sod it. Yeah. And you're dead to me.
Yeah.
So that's just as bad as shouting and screaming, isn't it? Because it's that repressed version of that anger and frustration. So, and bad day, they can be overcautious as well. They can kind of sit on the fence and not want to make a decision.
That resonates a lot.
Yeah, well, I lead with that. Yeah. We lead with that earth green. And then we move to our cool blue, and our cool blue is more of that good day, is about that real kind of logic. And
Excel master.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, Sam. Yeah, that logic, that ability to be analytical, really great under pressure, very calm under pressure, that cool blue. They're really good at kind of focusing on, right, this is a situation, let's not let it get out of hand, but let's look at root cause, let's look at solutions as well. Now, cool blue can be creative, just as sunshine yellow is creative, but they just do it in a much quieter, much more organised, a much more long-term way as well. So they are very they prefer their own company. They're not great in those big crowds. They definitely do. Their worst nightmare is if somebody said, get on the stage and talk to us about, they'd be absolutely beside themselves. And the flip of the good day, blue energy into the bad day, is all about that. They can do that kind of withdrawal bit. They can sometimes come across as being a little bit cold, a little bit less team orientated, because they just want to take themselves off and work through what they've got to work through and understand all the details. On a bad day, they can feel quite challenging with their questioning. So when they use it in good day, it's really good to get to root cause. On a bad day, it can feel like, all right, do you think I don't know what I'm doing? All right, you know, I didn't think of that, but there's no need to kind of take it to that degree. And they can be overcautious as well. On bad day, they share that with earth green too. So there's a very quick kind of flavour for what the energy colours kind of represent and how they kind of sound and feel.
So what's funny is when you were describing the colors, certain people from my life popped up, and it's like almost instantly you go, yeah, that's definitely somebody who's leading with blue, and that's a red, and that's yellow, or whatever. What was surprising for me is before you do the workshop, you have to fill in don't want to say test, but you have to you have to answer some questions, and at the end of the workshop, you get I think it's like 17 pages or 13 pages, your personal profile, and when you read through it, it's scary accurate. Even certain things you read, certain things that you don't want to admit, you think that's actually fucking me. I was like, it's almost. When I read that first time, it's almost like you had a proper session or a few sessions with a psychiatrist or psychoanalyst who created a personal profile based on your person. But it's all based on algorithms, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? Insights invests a lot into the research, and they've been around for a long time, and they are used globally as well. So, you know, they constantly strive to make the tool the best version that it can be. But fundamentally, the reason why is it's based on, you know, psychometric tool. So there's a science to it, you know, and I guess that's the bit that sometimes people don't always connect with at first. It's like, oh, it's a bit sort of mumbo jumbo-ish. I answer some questions and suddenly, you know, the way that the questions are constructed on the evaluator are designed to draw out those responses to help understand, you know, what is your go-to place? What is that emotion that you go to? And then helps create that overall picture. And if you think about it, you write your own profile.
Yeah, true.
Because you answer the questions about you.
But even the language that is written, it's not like bullet points. It's written like somebody wrote it, you know, like the language flows. It's written very nicely in English. It's hard to think that it's not written by, you know, AI, like AI is growing now, but it's a bit older, so it's all based on more sort of different algorithms, and that was shocking for me that it's written as a human would write it. So that was interesting for me.
And that's that connection bit, isn't it? Because actually, if it wasn't written in that way, would you want to take the time to read through it? But because it's very personable in the way that it's written, because it is about you, you go, okay, I'm interested. I'm going to carry on reading through this.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is that moment sometimes when you go, oh dear, that's true. But I like to think that I've got that nailed. I like to think that people don't see that side of me.
Yeah.
Inevitably, when we are under stress or change, or we're just having a really bad day, some of those things, we will absolutely leak those elements of our behaviours. We can't help it. We are human beings, aren't we? The bit is recognising it in yourself, maybe recognising the triggers so you don't get to that stage as well. So actually, if I recognise my triggers, I can have a word with myself at that stage. It means I'm not going to go into that grump or get frustrated. But again, we go to our irrational place, and it's harder then to start to rationalise and think, what do I need to do to, you know, get myself out of the way I'm feeling at the moment? But yeah, that can really help, asking that question, you know, right, why do I feel like this? Once you understand why you feel like that, you're more likely to be able to find that resolution, you know. And if you know the things that trigger you, not just because of your kind of insights, characteristics, but you as a person, I always think that's one of the kind of important things to recognise in yourself. But if you ask most people what triggers you, what triggers your bad moods, what triggers your frustration, people aren't very objective about it. And it's because they don't take the time to think about it. And so therefore they never really understand it to be able to mindfully practice, when do I need to have a word with myself?
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling this way.
And I think we tend to, if you ask somebody a question, what annoyed you, what made you angry, we usually point finger at other people, isn't it? Well, that person cut me off in traffic, or that person said something on this and this and that. But actually is just an event. Somebody has said something, but it triggers something within us, so we are responsible for that.
And I think it's okay to get it out as well. It's not that you should never have your little moment of, sometimes you need that, don't you? You just need to get it out. But once you've got it out, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
Am I going to let it carry on pissing me off? Or am I going to have a word to myself and say, right? And sometimes you can't always do something about, you can't change the situation that's happened. But what you might do is maybe have a little bit more empathy for the other person as well, because you might go, do you know what? What made them respond to me in that way? Yeah. Actually, maybe I didn't give them enough information. Maybe I was very abrupt in the way that I responded to them, and actually it's something that's really important to them. So just stopping and thinking really supports that understanding of what created the responses and why did I respond and what was the impact for me and for them. So, yeah.
So what are the benefits of knowing your energy colors and knowing a little bit more about those colors?
I think it links into the, you know, the tool is all about emotional awareness, and you have to kind of look within before you can kind of cultivate that emotional intelligence and how you kind of adapt and connect with other people. So I think it's recognizing what you're comfortable with. I always say, you'll have your energy colours at your comfortable place, and then you'll have your other energy colours which you're not so keen on engaging with. So it's good to understand what you're comfortable with, back to our strengths and how we utilise those and how we understand what makes us tick. How it helps us understand that we may go in certain potential situations that are going to trigger our less positive elements of our behaviours. So how do we self-manage our emotion? Because it's one thing being emotionally intelligent, but it's quite another to manage your emotions, because you can be very emotionally intelligent, but if you don't know how to manage those emotions, you're not going to get any benefit from all that kind of knowledge of the emotional intelligence. And I think it's just that whole awareness of be objective in your relationships. Don't be so subjective in your relationships. Use that empathy to understand others. And also understand the gifts that each of the energy colours bring. When opposite energy colours that, could quite easily clash, when they understand what each other's strengths are and what they bring to the party, you can create some really strong, impactful results from that, And I like to use the example of my earth green and sunshine yellow. I love to think about what's the next big idea for people. How am I going to help and support people and change their lives? That might be a little bit dramatic. That's the sunshine yellow. But I probably haven't thought about some of the logistics and some of the detail. So actually, if there's somebody that I know has got that kind of that strong cool blue and maybe that fiery red to keep the momentum of stuff, that can really support me if I'm open to go to them and say, do you know what? Tell me what I didn't think about.
Yeah.
Help me to kind of think about the stuff that might come up that I've not even considered because it's not my thing. Now, once you have an awareness of what's not your thing, you can definitely encourage yourself to think, right, take myself to a cool blue place, what haven't I thought about? Take myself to a fiery red place, what haven't I thought about? But actually, if you've got a colleague or somebody that you trust that can support you with that, why wouldn't you? Back to that curiosity bit. Let me be curious about things I've not thought about. Then you can get some really solid results for you as an individual, for the business that you work in, your relationships, outside of work as well. So, yeah, I think you can tell I should be on commission from Insights Discovery,
Definitely.
shouldn't I?
If it was up to me, I would definitely put you on a commission for it. So how this knowledge can be used in daily life? What is the practicality of it?
I think probably the way that you can use it every day is that whole communication and interaction piece. Because you think about how many different people you talk to in different scenarios in a day. Communication is a big part of what we do. And even if you just focused on that communication bit, if I send an email to somebody that I know has a really strong preference for fiery red, I will not ask them, hello, how was your weekend? What's been going on? Because I generally just want you to get to the point.
Yeah.
If I pick up the phone to them or Teams call them is my preference, I'll just say, things okay? Yeah. I won't kind of go into a lot of detail because they're not really interested in it. So I think it's just finding those little practicalities in the way that you communicate and interact that means you make that person kind of sit up and go, oh, okay, you're talking my language, Whereas if I were, when somebody emails me, I like them to ask me how I am, what's been going on. I love all of that. If you just go, Sam, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. There probably was a time.
You will cringe.
I'd be like, how?
You rude bastard.
How very rude. Now I go, it's their preference. Yeah. And I don't get offended by it. So something as simple as an email or a Teams message, we can completely take on a different connotation because we have different ways of thinking and feeling and doing. Understanding that helps avoid some of those niggly, awkward, challenging moments. So I'd say that's probably the best way to practically apply it every single day.
I totally agree with that. I think when I started my life in a corporate environment, I had a similar similar sort of approach when somebody send an email. You'd be like, oh, that's so rude. Oh my God. What is my, I hope this email finds you well.
Yeah.
How was your weekend?
Yeah.
But then what I found out is that knowing the people a little bit more and knowing who the email is from helps you get that email a bit differently, receive it differently. It's almost like when you send, let's say, WhatsApp messages with your friend that you know really well. They send you something and you almost know how they would say that if they were in front of you, and you receive that differently. And if somebody you don't know send you the same message, you'd be like, whoa, hold your horses.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that. And I've been observing a lot with people that I work with, and I can totally see that. For example, people that I get on with very well and I know where they come, another person may say, well, this person, I don't like them. I don't get along with them. They're very rude. They send me this emails that way. But then I have the understanding that that person may be, first of all, different color, or second of all, it's actually somebody on an exec level who don't have a time to send, I hope this email finds you well. So I find it really interesting that our perception will allow us to see the same sort of email, the same message totally differently, even if it's from the same person. Yeah. And exactly what you said, going through the insights, open my eyes into when I receive a message or I work with somebody, I first think about what is the dominant color, and then what do they mean when they communicate with me? And second step, how can I better communicate with them? As you may think, why would I do this? Why would I want to pander to other people? Why do I want to be people pleasing? But it's not about that. It's about making your life easier as well, because you communicate with them the way they will understand. It's almost like going to executive team, CEOs and, whatever, and asking them to invest in a workplace intervention or whatever, a program, and tell them about the impact you will have in the world. And we only need £1 million. It's not going to land. But if you start talking about benefits, financial benefits, you will have a much better chance of getting further, because that's the language that they speak. Those are the things that are important. So I think it's incredible, and it's so interesting. It's super interesting.
It's fascinating.
So obviously we all have most of those 4 colors within us,
yes,
or at least a little bit of them, but on different levels.
Yeah. So we say you've got your inclined use of colour energies. For some people, it's just one colour energy every day of the week. For some, it's 2. For some, it's 3. And you kind of have them in differing percentages, really. So that can, and that's really important to remember. We're a combination of energy colours and levels of energy colours. So sometimes people go, oh, we're the same colours, but actually the kind of percentages could be quite different, and that can change the kind of dynamics of the behaviour as well. So it's really important that people understand the element of the way that combinations play together, and the kind of levels of the combinations that play together as well. And I think there's just another important point that I was thinking about as we were talking, Sam, is there's also that element of learned experiences that can come into play. There's cultural elements that can come into play as well, So whilst we do have those energy colour preferences, there is also those elements to think about, There will still be the way that they sit with you, because I think one of the examples I use is cool blue people don't tend to like lots of kind of touchy-feely elements, They'll kind of be like, oh, that person's coming to me with like wide open arms to give me a hug. Yeah. But actually, if you've been brought up in an environment, from a very early age where actually you are a family of huggers and touchy-feely, you've grown up experiencing that, and so it's okay. Now, you probably still have an element of a stranger kind of approach, or someone you didn't know so well. You would probably still have that kind of feeling. Yeah. And different people have it. I always say you get a feeling here, or you get a feeling in your stomach, or different people have it in different places. You probably still have that feeling of just slight uncomfortableness, but your learned behaviour kind of kicks in and goes, it's okay. And so it's really important to remember as well that whilst we do have these energy colour preferences, those other things come into play as well. And situational experiences too, where we link it to experiences, can really impact the way that we respond to those situations. So it's not a straightforward gig, Whilst I say there's a simplicity and there's the 4 energy colours, there's other things as well, like our introversion and extroversion, our kind of thinking and feeling preferences that come into play. It's just important to remember those elements. So some people are like, well, I love a hug. And we're like, okay, well, let's talk about where that comes from. But actually, if one of your colleagues came to hug you, how would you feel? Oh, no. Whereas somebody with that sunshine yellow energy would be like, yes.
Yeah.
Anyone can come hug me. So it's really interesting. It's about sometimes getting people to really think about what's the kind of motivation behind the behaviour and the output. And that's what can help distinguish between the energy colours often and those other kind of learnt experiences.
So how can somebody dial in their energy colors that are not natural for them? For example, I'm in my natural state, my sort of relaxed state, or however else you want to put it. I'm very high green, very, very high green, and all the other colors are very low. So it sort of lends itself almost to like people-pleasing behaviors and stuff like that. What if there is a situation where I need more of that sort of red, being on the ball, being straight to the point, or I decide that I need to be that in, today or tomorrow for next week? How can somebody dial those colors up and down?
I think maybe there's a question to ask yourself before that.
Okay.
Could I use my preferred energy colour in a way that will achieve that result? But I just haven't necessarily thought about the way that I could achieve it using that energy colour.
I like that. It's a ninja move.
So that would be my first thing to think about. Then my next thing is to think about what particular elements do I need to dial up? And how am I going to do it in a way that's going to be very impactful in a positive way? So sometimes what can happen is, and I kind of give a real life example of this, I think, in the sense that fiery red is not one of my preferred energy colours. And when I first started to dial up my fiery red, I went to bad day. I was a little bit more assertive, a little bit more bolshy than aggressive than I was assertive. So I just came across as being a bit antsy and a bit naggy. So I didn't think about the way that I would dial up the energy colour. I didn't go to the place of, well, what's going to be assertive? Actually, what kind of language will I use that will be very assertive? How will I tailor my preferred style of not storytelling, which is what I like to do? It went more to I'm going to tell them what I want in the way that I want it. Well, that's more the bad day than the good day, fiery red. So I think that's an important thing to think about when you're saying, how am I going to dial it up? Think about some examples of when you've seen the good day version of that energy colour, and how can I adopt those? How will they sit comfortably with me? And when you're practicing them, everyone's really different. I always remember that when I first thought about some situations that I needed to dial up some of that positive fiery red energy, I did things like draw a red border around my notes. I did bullet points of my notes so that I would just look down and go, remember, Sam, you've got to be fiery red today. They were just visual cues for me that helped me remember good day and you've got to stay on it. When my earth green's going, I just want to run to the loo and cry. It was back to the no, you can be a strong, powerful woman in this situation. You've just got to remind yourself it's not necessarily your norm, but it's within your ability to do that if you mindfully focus and practice what you're going to do.
But I like what you said in the beginning. Think about how can you use your preferred color in a way to get the outcome that you want. It's probably a better outlook on the situation.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. I'm learning.
I always say it's really easy to pigeonhole people like into
Yeah.
job roles and different elements of scenarios. And I always say we can all achieve the same results. We just go about it in a different way because of the way that we think, feel and do. And that's a really powerful message, I think.
You can even think about people who have been very successful, like famous CEOs, and you pick up 4, 5 or 10 people and they won't be the same. You will have somebody who's fiery red and somebody who's straight on the ball, straight to the point, yada yada. But you'll have somebody who's very people oriented and say that, you know, investing in people is important, and find a way to make sure that I'm available for people, yada yada yada. So it's very interesting. We both, I think, have a keen interest in mental health, and I think we're both mental health first aid instructors. What is your opinion on that whole mental health first aid thing?
I think that it's a great support mechanism in a business if it's used well. I think it's really important that people feel there is a safe space for them to express how they're kind of thinking and feeling around their mental health. And I think it's interesting because we often think about mental health in crisis and not well-being, and we talk about this a lot, don't we, Sam, about how important it is about the well-being bit. And the point I was going to make from that is it's very easy that lots of businesses do focus on it more being about the crisis moments and not about that really holistic approach to mental well-being as well. Actually, how can we be more proactive? And I think that's a common thing across a lot of businesses. It's not unique, you know, to any one business or to us. I think it's really important that people understand it's a responsibility. So for you and I, we're mental health first aiders. We've got a group of people, you know, and mental health allies. I think it's important that people understand the kind of responsibility that comes with that. You know, you'll know I'm very passionate. I talk about a workshop's not always the way forward, but actually I'm really passionate about just doing something half a day online. For me, doesn't feel like it gives enough of that knowledge and enough of that space to ask questions and to reflect and to have conversations, which is an important part of understanding the responsibility as well as some of the practical tools that you use as well. So it's great. It's great to have that in the business, but I think probably most places start in a place where is that real focus on how can we be proactive about well-being? And we do that through some of the policies that we have. We do it around some of the way in which our values are kind of reinforced, in the way that we have conversations in those incidental moments, or, you know, some of those planned things like in a one-to-one, 5 minutes, talk to me about what's going on in your world at the moment. You can usually, if someone's not in a great place, they'll usually have an element of you can pick up on that. Yeah. And I think I'm a big believer in it's about opening the door for people. I never want to open the door and push you through it. What I want to do is say, I'll open the door and then it's up to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to make people feel safe and secure. That's just my perspective of it. You know, it's different for everybody, but that's just my perspective.
No, it's a really good perspective. I agree with you 100%, especially if you know somebody, you can pick up straight away if something is not right. Even through messages, like text messages, you can see straight away that something is up almost instantly. And I agree with you as well that it's a really good tool. That's the reason why it became so popular in UK. It's a really good tool, but I think it's a really good way to start the mental health and well-being practices within the business, because then not only you're prepared for a crisis to support your colleagues, but also it brings a lot of understanding and knowledge into the business. But I think it's not the only thing that we should do. Now we should think about how can we prevent people from getting into that crisis point, and how can we promote a positive mental well-being? How can we make sure that people have knowledge and understanding of how to take care of themselves to not get into that point? And I feel like a lot of conversation around male well-being, it's around stuff that has its place, but it's just like feel-good things like taking a bath, have a candle.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't talk enough about the practical things. About, you ask me about my telly, why don't I have a telly? Because it didn't serve me well.
Yeah.
And I say always that the things that you watch, listen to, read, people that you spend your time with, has a massive effect on your well-being and on who you are. then what do you do on a daily basis? What kind of things do you do? What kind of people you support, you surround yourself with? Do you feel fulfilled in your job, or do you go there and you fucking hate every day?
Yeah.
So I feel like all that stuff is missing from the conversation. What do you think? Is there anything else that you think is missing?
I think the other bit is normalizing the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So even though there are mental health allies available, there is, various resources, there's people that say you can always come and talk to me. There will always be somebody that feels like it's a conversation that's not a natural conversation. It's not part of every day. And I go back to opening the door. What's going on in your world at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
And if there's that hesitation, what else is going on? Or do you want to talk to me about what's going on? We are creating space for them to say, yes, I do. But equally, Sam, I think sometimes we need to respect that people want to say, no, I don't. But it can very much feel like, well, these people are in place, the support's in place. So why aren't you taking that up? Some people just aren't in that space. And we need to respect that. And you can only support people to a certain level if they're not open and willing to do that. And actually, in some respects, you can turn them off from maybe when they are already having the conversation, because they almost feel like it's been, what's going, tell me, I can see something's not right. So why won't you talk to me?
Mm-hmm.
We're here to support. It can almost become quite negative. And that bit of, I'm just going to keep it to myself now, because do you know what?
That person became annoying. They ask me every 5 minutes. Yeah, definitely.
You didn't respect that I may not be in that place. But actually, knowing that you've opened the door for me is enough.
Yeah.
Again, it's different for everybody. For me to know that someone had opened the door for me and left it at that, and I may have acknowledged something's not right with me, but you leave the door open, I make a choice. Now, my choice might not always be informed based on my emotional well-being at that moment, but it's still for me to make that choice as an individual, unless I'm at risk of, putting myself in harm's way or other people in harm's way. Then that's a different conversation, isn't it? But I think we can lose the real importance of understanding that people need different levels of support. And whilst an intervention might be what we perceive to be the best thing, it's only when that person's ready to do so. Absolutely. I'm really passionate about that, Sam.
I've recently seen a conversation about assisted dying for mental health problems, and I've seen somebody walking around the street asking people for their opinion. What do you think about that idea?
So, I think when it comes to that kind of the mental well-being element, I mean, I'm all for it in a situation where you may be at end of life, you can't look after yourself, you're past that. Sign me up.
I think we had a conversation about that when we both agree, when we get to that point where I can't just,
if
anything.
If I'm not living my life in a purposeful and meaning way for me, then sort me out, get me gone. I want to enjoy my life. I want to be able to give some value to other people, to suddenly, be in a situation where I can't do things for myself, I can't think for myself, I can't add value to other people. I kind of think for me, I've had my years. Now, I know some people will be quite outraged by that approach. I go back to, that's my choice.
Yeah.
That's my choice. And as long as it's an informed choice and it's a well thought through choice, then that's my choice to make. And when it comes to that well-being piece, I guess it's a really tricky one, because where we are emotionally, in some respects, I think it's a little bit different from a physical stance. When you're physical and everything's shutting down and you can no longer do that, that feels more final for me than there may be a chance, with that mental well-being element. It depends how far you've gone, because people obviously do decide that they don't want to carry on, and they make that decision, to kind of take that option of taking that life, don't they? But I think it's all about, it's being informed, about talking it through. It's about us understanding where is that person. Some people get to such a point of despondency, I guess, that they can't imagine any other way out, you know. And it's difficult, but that's a choice that they made. I always remember somebody saying to me, oh, God, people that kind of take their own life, it's so selfish. And I kind of like, my response was, can you imagine being in a place where you would even contemplate that?
Yeah.
Just think about that. What has impacted that person that's got them to a place to take such action that's the only way for them forward? You know, I think it's, I was quite taken aback by it, and I was kind of like, it's all very well if you live in a world where you feel very well rounded and everything works out for you, and you clearly can't conceive where somebody can get to want to take that action. So please don't be judgmental on that. I really struggled with it, and it was somebody very close to me that said it as well.
I mean, I've heard opinions like that even during the courses that I've delivered, and what I found out usually comes from the lack of understanding of the subject. Because when you start understanding how and why would somebody even consider, people switch. And I even had a situation where two guys were giggling and laughing about, because we were talking about suicide. How can suicide be accidental? But instead of me flipping out saying, "No, how can you do that?" Blah, 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 I knew where it comes from, and when we started talking about that, we go to the accidental suicide bit, and I asked them question. I didn't tell them. I asked them question. How do you think suicide could be accidental? And they started thinking, and they gave me answers, and you can see that switch, and they go, "Oh, actually, that can happen." Yeah. Being in that unfortunate position where I actually considered suicide very seriously, actually fucking few times, but
that makes me just want to hug you when you say that.
I would rather 100 quid, but a hug will do. No, but being in that low point, thinking about assisted dying, the opinions were split. And you may say, well, if somebody's suffering and they choose to go, let them go. But the problem is with mental health problems is that a vast majority of people and vast majority of the conditions you can recover from. It's a small percentage of people who, with severe schizophrenia, for example, they will have to be on heavy medication for the rest of their lives. But majority of people will recover. The problem is that when you're in that place, when you actually go through something difficult and hard and you struggle, you don't see a way out. You think you're going to be stuck in that fucking place for the rest of your life. And thinking about my story, when I was in that place, and if somebody came to me and offered me that, I'll probably fucking took it. I probably would. And probably a lot of other people would say the same, because it's a different way of going. It's a bit less barbaric, I would say. It's more personable, but I don't think it's a way to go. I agree with you. Being in a place, if I was in a place where my health was quickly deteriorating to the point where at some point my body would not respond and I would just suffocate and die, at certain point I would say I just want to go before it becomes too much. And I've seen a documentary a few years which was a heartbreaking story of a guy who was in his 40s or early 50s, very happy guy, great family, kids, beautiful wife, business, very successful, like life of the party, let's put it that way. He didn't want to die, but he got an illness that was either attacking his nervous system or his muscular system, his muscles. One of them, that he started losing control of his body slowly to the point where his wife had to do everything for him. He was becoming immobile, to the point where they said, on one day, your body will stop breathing. You'll stop breathing because you will lose that ability and you will just suffocate. That's a fucking hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And that's the decision that he made. He said, I want to go before that stuff happens where I have to lie down on my bed, can't move, and I'll have to just look at the ceiling 24/7 and can't do anything. I'm just going to wait until I die. And his wife was against, because she wanted to keep him for as long as she wanted to, which is understandable. You don't want to lose that close person. But I 100% understand his choice, and I probably would do the same. But when we talk about mental health problems, I know so many fucking people who were on the bottom. I know somebody who's my close friend. I don't want to name any names, but you know him as well, who was homeless, who had a serious drug addiction, tried to take his life 3 times, went through all kind of fucking therapies and had multiple diagnoses. And he had every reason to say, fuck it, I'm going. But he didn't.
Yeah.
And now he's one of the best fucking people
best
I've
life.
met. Exactly. So not only very happy dude, really good to be around, very fucking successful. And what if we just accept, well, he's not doing very well. Let's just fucking give him that way out. And we would lose such a fucking fantastic person.
Yeah.
Not only that, he's somebody who now is actively working within that space to help other people.
Yeah.
So
it's a tricky one, isn't it, Sam? And I think even from a physical perspective, it's tricky as well. But I go back to, it's about your individual choice as well, isn't it? You know, and when you think about assisted death, even when it's physical, there is still a lot of different things that you need to go to get to the point where actually, yes, we'll support you in that. You know, obviously not in our country, but there is a lot that you have to go through. It's a process, isn't it? There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of thought and stuff, but fundamentally, it's about choice, you know. And I think that's the thing to hold in mind. But like you say, when it's something like that kind of mental crisis, actually, you know, a lot of people, as you say, can come out the other side of that mental crisis. And let's not forget that there's often, you know, lots of kind of biological elements to mental crisis and treatments, you know. So just like a physical illness, can you treat that physical illness, you know, or is it actually, no, it's at that stage where you can no longer treat it. But it's always going to be a controversial one, I think, and some people would be very much more vocal about their opinion and what's right and what's wrong. But sometimes I'm kind of like, who's to say what's right or wrong for that individual?
It's a really good question. I had a thought and it's run away. Damn it, it ran away.
I interrupted you there.
No, I wanted to say something. We're not going to backtrack. But it's a really tricky situation. Damn it, I forgot what I wanted to say.
I
getting
think
old.
we always think about the people that are left behind, and that's probably some of the thing that maybe people like to go, but what about the people that you leave behind? Actually, if I'm miserable and I'm incapable and I'm just existing, actually, I'm not doing anybody any favours. So you're going to grieve me initially, but remember the joy of, you know, our time together. Focus on that, you know. It's interesting, little bit linked to it, but it's that whole people around how people feel and perceive about unattended funerals, you know. I've made a conscious decision that actually when it's my time, I do not want any faff, any pomp and ceremony. I'm just going to get taken off, cremated, come back, mix me with a bit of glitter and throw me out to sea.
I like that. Going out with style.
I don't want everyone to stand in a drafty crematorium and hear some words about me and have a bit of a weep about me.
She still owes me £20.
Yeah, she said she was going to sort this out for me.
Yeah.
I would rather that people got together, remembered the fond memories, Maybe had a
Celebrate
little
your
bit of
life.
champagne afternoon tea, and equally take some time to remember the relationship I had with that individual, even if it's for just a couple of minutes. Because my belief is when we leave our body, there is just an empty shell there. So why the hell would I want to make a big deal about the empty shell that's there? But I'm surprised by how sometimes people respond to that. Not that it comes up frequently in conversation. And one of my good friends was kind of like, I can't believe that, Sam. I can't believe that you don't want us all to come and kind of see you off. And, I mean, I don't view it as seeing me off because I've already gone.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, isn't it? That whole perspective. And she was almost a little bit kind of upset by the fact that that's something that I was going to do. I've not considered it. That's definitely what's happening. But I go back to that's my individual choice, and it's about respecting people's individual choices, isn't it? You may not always understand why they've made those choices. Ask some questions if you want to try and understand, and have some empathy that person's got to that decision because they've thought about it, and they've worked it through, and just understand that actually we're all different in our approaches to stuff, and that's okay. And if that's what you want to do, then that's what you should do.
Yeah.
Very simplistic, maybe. But yeah, I can't think of anything worse of everybody having a good old weep around, as they say goodbye to me. I'm like, what's that about?
It makes me think about my grandfather's funeral when I was a teenager, when I was 18 or 19. And traditionally in Poland, when somebody passes away, especially in rural areas, they obviously are taken away. They are prepared. And then you'll have the body in the casket at home for, I think, 2 days or something like that. So that
not for me.
so that people can come and sort of say the final, goodbyes and pray and sort of. And that was the first time I've seen a dead body in real life. And it was such a bizarre moment. Obviously, that's my grandfather, somebody that I was really close with. But you look at the body and it's him, but it's a bit different him. It's almost like a wax figure of him. You look at the body, but it's slightly different. You can see the life sort of escaped. Yeah. Even when somebody sleeps versus somebody it's a totally different. Yeah. It was a very interesting experience. So one more point I want to make about the assisted dying for mental health was that if we think about the risk factors, when we think about things that make people develop mental health conditions, a lot of them are very practical problems, like divorce, financial problems at work, being bullied and all that. So when we easily give people that options to just end their life, I think we are missing a trick to actually first think about how can we support them in maybe solving some of those problems so that the resulting mental health issue might be better resolved rather than, killing people, because essentially that's what it is. So it's a strange one.
It is. It's fascinating.
It's we could talk about that probably for hours. Have you ever been to therapy?
I have, Sam.
Okay. What's your opinion on therapy?
I think, again, it's about understanding what's right for you. I didn't go till many years later from when I probably had the whole kind of worst elements of where I was. It was kind of later on in life when I thought, maybe it's not all my fault.
Yeah.
It's like a little light bulb moment. I think, I'm not being ageist, but I think as you get older and you reflect, you're a little bit more open to thinking about things. So I'd left it it was quite a significant chunk of time. But I just kind of thought, why not give it a go? And I did find it beneficial in the sense that it's really easy to listen to your own self-talk. It's really easy not to be objective with self, not have a word with yourself sometimes. Made me think about why some of my behaviours are the way they are and how ingrained they are in who I am. And despite the fact that I have always actively tried to fight against some of those behaviours around like my confidence, you know, and how I feel about, you know, myself and the way I'm perceived by other people, you know, have that word with myself, but there's always that reminder of some of the stuff from my past that bubbles up and goes, oh, but, you know, you're not a nice person, or you're not very clever, or, you know, you're not very pretty, are you? That type of thing, which sounds really shallow, I know, but... So it helped give me the space to reflect on some stuff in a way that was focused, because the questions that were being asked made me focus on some of those things. So did it tell me anything I didn't already know, or did it make me think about things that I hadn't necessarily thought about? Maybe not. But did it give me the space and time to put it all together and think about it in a more logical way, which is a word that I don't use very often, logical, because that's not me. I think it did. And it made me say to myself, actually, you did all right. You did all right. You're not perfect, and there's some little things that come and tap you on the shoulder and catch you out. But do you know what? All things considered, you're okay. Mm-hmm. So even that validation was a benefit to me. I can't say it any massive life-changing moment or significantly changed who I am and the way that I do things. I'd say it was quite subtle, but subtle enough for me to have felt benefit from it. And when people talk about going for therapy and then maybe they're not so positive about it, I kind of just say, sometimes it's not necessarily about what you're going to say in there, but it's about having the space and the time and the focus. That if you do want to say some stuff, you can do. And because there's a trained person in the room with you, they can support you with that. And so I always say to people, don't, you know, think about it before you outrightly rule it out. But equally, I realise it's not for everybody, and that's okay too.
Yeah. It's incredible how the person who knows how to ask questions can get something out of you that is so obvious once it's out and it was just in front of your face, and you wonder about, why have I been behaving this way? Why has this been a pattern in my behavior for the last 20, 30, whatever years?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, but it does.
Yeah.
When you talk to somebody who knows how to connect the dots and ask the right questions, you're like, why have I never thought about it? It all makes total sense. What also stood out for me was, I had a conversation with my friends about therapy, and they said, yeah, it was a great process, but when you decide to go, don't expect to have any breakthroughs. The first 6 sessions or whatever is just you feeling each other out, you getting to know each other. It was bullshit. For me, I started talking to this lady, and straight, my kind of lady, straight out of the gate, she's like, okay, so what can I help you with? I'm like, okay, like that.
You're supposed to tell me.
Because I'm not in that sense, but coming from the coaching space, I'm used to having the chemistry sessions. How can I help you? This is a little bit about me. Like, it was none of that bullshit. She was just, how can I help you? And I'm like, okay, I have these problems. And she started asking questions that in my first ever therapy sessions a few years ago, I already had a few breakthroughs. And at that time I was in Newcastle, and then I had 6 or 7 hour drive back home. So I didn't listen to the music, and I was processing. I'm like, this is brilliant. And you start thinking, and what always stood out for me, that all those breakthroughs that you have, it was always just in front of your face, but you couldn't connect the dots because you kind of are stuck in your way of thinking. So you almost need somebody from outside of that cycle of thinking to nudge you in the right direction. And you go, this is so obvious.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I think it's really interesting as well, that whole perception of therapy, because I didn't actually tell anybody at the time that I was going for therapy, because I felt like, well, people judge me, that I can't sort my own shit out.
Yeah.
Also because I've never really talk to anyone about the full extent of my experiences. Some people know a little bit more than others, very close people. My family probably being least aware of some of the stuff that have been on the periphery of it. But I almost felt a bit ashamed, like, why can't I, why am I going to somebody? And this is, you know, a significant period of time from when the kind of element of trauma happened in my life. But I still felt that element of, I can't really tell people, what are they going to think about me doing that? And why can't I sort my own shit out? And it's really interesting that you think like that. But I think it probably came from that place where I had to learn from a very early age that way of protecting myself was keeping everything to myself and being independent and being strong and not reaching out for help, because that protected me in a way. But it's really interesting that I like to think of myself as a pretty well thought out person, got the head on the right way, encourages other people to talk about emotions, and I'm quite comfortable to sit with other people's emotions. I'm really comfortable with that. You know, if somebody cries, I'm like, don't worry, I'm comfortable with sitting here while you have a little cry, because it's just an expression of your emotion. You're just a physical expression is, you know, anger's the same. They're just physical expressions. But it did, you know, even to this day, I sometimes think, wow, we are more complex than we realise. You know, somebody who would always encourage that still had that element of, it's not something I should talk about. It's not something that, you know, I felt a bit ashamed that I went at first. I was a bit like, why can't I deal with it? Why has it got to this point? Why am I suddenly having this moment when it's years and years later?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? That whole perception piece around it. Because now I'm like, you know, if it's something you're thinking about, then find some information out and consider, is it going to work for you? And go for it. But yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I still am a little bit, I can still feel a little bit nervous talking about it now. I don't know if you can pick up on that. But I still have a little element of, I did that.
I hope I'm not entrenching into the areas that you don't want to talk about.
No, Sam, because that it's important that people do talk about it. You know, I think that's part of the problem, where people don't talk about stuff. It kind of encourages that guilt of what happened maybe, or encourages those feelings of kind of, I think it's a lot about self-worth for me, how I was made to feel, and the things that happened at a time when you're supposed to be protected and nurtured, and that wasn't there, and you're constantly told it's you. That stays with you for a long time.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
You know, and that's probably why there is that nervousness still, because there's still that little girl inside that goes, what are people going to think? Because they're going to think it's me. But it's good to talk about it, because it's more common than we realise often. So sometimes, you know, where people have talked about stuff and I felt comfortable to share some experiences, I would never go into all of the detail. So there is a little caveat there. I will talk about it because I think, I don't want to be defined by the things that happened to me early on and the lasting effect, but I don't want to be defined by that. And I always say I'm pretty resilient because of what did and the way that I approached it. So there's a happy ever after. I'm always like, I can be resilient because I dealt with all of this and I found a way out. Now, it wasn't always positive in the ways that I found my way. But actually, overall, I've done all right. If I fail at something, I hear that little girl voice that says, well, you'll never amount to anything. You'll never be good at anything. And actually, it spurs me on to go, right then. You want to watch me do it? Yeah. So I try and, you have the initial bit where you go, no, I'm never going to be able to do it. Or, people are going to laugh at me. They're going to think I'm stupid. They're going to be like, what is she doing? And then I go, do you know what? No, I'm going to do this because I am not going to be defined by what's happened to me. And I think that's why it's important to share it, that says you can help yourself in some ways. You can get past some of this. Not everybody might. But actually, there's some good news story in what happened as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
My less rational side with the emotion
Yeah.
coming out there.
One of the lessons that came out from me, which was not something that you want to accept first, but it's just factual, um, and it's not just lesson for me, but I feel like it's a wider spread message in general. Was that when we talk about the difficult situations in the past in therapy, you say, "Oh, I wish I behaved differently. I wish I've done this differently." Because there's a lot of talk like, what would you do different, or what would you say to that person if that situation happened, whatever, whatever. And we want to believe that if I went back to the same situation, I would have behaved differently. But what I've learned is that you have done the best you could have in that situation, having the experiences and knowledge of life that you have had. So even if you feel like you're stupid, or you feel like you were cowardly and you maybe ran away or whatever, you have done that to protect yourself. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow in the beginning, because I don't want to accept that, somewhere maybe in my past, if somebody wanted to bully me in the school, let's say, and I ran away being cowardly, that's okay. For a guy, it's like, yeah, it's okay. It just happened, right? But that's the fact. You do what's the best for you in the moment. Even when we think about engaging in like self-destructive behaviors, there's a payoff, there's a benefit that comes with it. For example, for me, drinking I was trying to cure my anxiety. Well, it led me to almost, ending my own life. But the benefit in the moment was it helped me to not feel anxious. But then I felt anxious a bit more, so I drank a bit more, and the cycle continues. So it's interesting how different lessons you can get out of therapy.
I think as well, Sam, I go back to sometimes it's okay to say, this has stayed with me. So I don't want to be defined by what happened. But I think equally it's okay to say, this has stayed with me. One of the things that people very close to me will say is that I am almost stubbornly independent sometimes.
Stubbornly independent, I like that.
I won't reach out. If something's wrong, I'll try
I'm the same.
Yeah, I'll try and sort it out first.
Yeah.
I'll keep it in, try and sort it out. And they're kind of like, we love you. We want to kind of support you. Why didn't you talk to us about it? I go back to, there was a place when there wasn't that support and that love and that acceptance there. And that learned behaviour of, you're on your own. If you're going to survive, you're on your own. And you've got to sort your own shit out. And so I'll call it out. I'll be like, I know I don't. There's a reason why I don't do it. But I will come to you if I'm in a place where I feel I really do need that support. And I think that's about people that love me and care about me and get on friends that get on with me. It's about accepting who I am, my good stuff, but also the stuff that's less, kind of positive in that way. But it took me a long time to say, you're right, I am fiercely independent and this is why I am. So for them, they're like, doesn't she realise we love her? Doesn't she realise we care? Doesn't she realise we're interested? It's quite selfish of her. So sometimes it's also about owning the stuff and calling it out, and where it still hangs in there, just acknowledging it and maybe expressing that. I don't really want to touch you, I'm not in the right place. I just need to work it through first. If I want your help, don't take it personally. It's that conversation that makes people, I think especially people that love you, find it particularly hard.
Yeah. But that's what I learned, because I'm similar. And I've learned that hyper-independence is a trauma response usually. And that's exactly what you said. When you don't have the support system or a person in your early life, you learn to depend on yourself only, and then that shows up in your later life. But it's knowing that is one thing, and being sort of implementing that in your life is another thing. And I found myself very often, especially when we're talking about energy colors and that green, when you sort of close in and you push everybody away and you want to figure things out for yourself. I'm the same. When I'm in a bad place, I'm like, fuck all of you. pardon the pardon, but that's just how it works. Like
Yeah.
if I'm struggling with something or somebody hurts my feelings or does something bad, I'm like, fuck everybody, I'm just gonna get through it myself, because that's my learned behavior. And I'm not trying to say like I had an abusive childhood, my mother was not there, and my father beat me with the whatever with the stick, but it was my sort of family life when in certain direction, and that is a learned behavior from childhood, and again it shows up in your adult life. And sometimes you may think like, it doesn't make sense, why do I do things like that? I know that I have people around me that will help me, but it's simple. Look in your childhood. Freud would fucking love this conversation.
And ironically, you think about, you and I, Sam, you think about our training, you think about our whole coaching, you think about our ethos about supporting people. If anybody knows what you should do, it should be us.
Yeah.
But it's where that irrational part of your brain
Yeah.
kicks in, because the emotion is quite intense in that moment, that the irrational bit kicks in and you just say, no, I'm going to keep it to myself, and I'm going to sort my own shit out, and I'm not going to ask for support, when quite clearly someone probably could support you.
What's funny is when I was a teenager and I started getting interested in psychology, and I started reading the first books, I thought that people who are psychologists don't have any problems in life. Legit, that was my belief when I was a teenager, like early sort of 17, 18 years of age. My logic was, if somebody knows how people work, how people think, how the world works, why would somebody have problems? If they know how it all works, they shouldn't have any problems. I'm like, fuck, that must be a really good life. And then I sort of matured a bit more. I grew up and I realized that's such a bollocks, because knowing how things work and being a messy human that we all are, and having, relationships and job and businesses, whatever, it's a totally different story. And we all have these problems, even if you have the understanding. So
I think, Sam, the phrase messy humans, that's the reality.
yeah.
And even from the outside, people that look like they've got it all going on, there will be something underneath that you're just not seeing. There is no, I find it really hard to think there's somebody that hasn't got, there's not something that's happened, or, you can be very happy, but there will be some point in your life where you will have that moment of a little bit of doubt, or, not sure where to go with it, or it's just not sitting right with you.
When you were a child, did you have that belief that, like a lot of people that I spoke to have the same belief, that adults had everything figured out and they had their shit together? Did you think that?
No.
Because like for me as a child, I used to always think that when you become an adult, you will have all your shit together, you'll know how things work. But the older I become, the more I realize that we have fucking no idea. We are all winging it. And there's something beautiful around that, because it's not almost like it would be boring if you get to a certain age, you cross 30 or 5, let's say, and you have everything figured out. It'd be fucking boring. And it's just, we are all winging it. It's another incredible thing about life that I love so much.
I think as individuals, we all have different levels of cautiousness. And that cautiousness is about, I'm cautious, therefore I'm going to have a life plan around, I want to have paid my mortgage off by X, I want to have achieved by X amount of time. And if you're super cautious, you've probably got that timeline, you're probably getting there to achieve it. Whereas there's people that's less cautious that go, I generally know that what's going to make me happy and I'm just going to go for it. It's probably that bit. There's no real formula. There's no one formula that fits all, because actually different people have those very different approaches to it, and different things are important to people in different ways. Security is hugely important to me. It's a massive thing for me. So will I take some risks? I will, but only if I'm comfortable with the risk.
Okay.
And that, I guess, comes from that lack of security in my early years. That stayed with me. Has it stopped me from doing things that maybe I would have liked to have done? Yes, it has. am I that bothered about it? I kind of go, "'Tis who I am." So if I really want to do it, I'll push myself. It's a bit like today, Sam. I was quite nervous about today. This isn't my thing.
Yeah.
But there's that bit that said in me, do you know what? Step out of that little cautious shadow that you're in and give it a go. And sometimes it's about doing little things just to build up that confidence or understanding, you know, I can push myself a little bit and it's okay, you know, because my place of I love to be really, you know, secure and comfortable would say, don't do it, Sam, don't do it. Because you're just going to sound really ridiculous and everyone's going to laugh at you. No one's going to be interested. And
you see, the opposite thing actually happened. You have a really nice voice and I'm having a rather very interesting conversation with you. I feel like we could sit here for fucking 2 days having pizza delivered and just eating and continue talking. I'm curious about how spirituality for you fits in all of that, because you consider yourself to be a spiritual person, I think. So what is your view on spirituality?
Yeah. So I always say I'm not godly. It's not about God. It is about spirituality. It's about the power of nature. It's about how we embrace kind of nature and its healing qualities. It's about spirituality for me is about kindness. It's about finding that one thing that we can connect with that makes us feel safe. Back to security. Makes us feel safe and makes us more open to other people's needs as well. So quite a woolly definition, really.
Yeah.
Again, it's everyone's different, isn't it? So the power of nature is huge for me. You know, I was in Cornwall this weekend. The sea soothes my soul like you wouldn't believe. You know, for some people like, the sea, Sam, soothes your soul. What the hell are you talking about? For me, it's that sense of nature, you know, that whole rhythm of kind of the way that there's a life cycle to things, the way that things regenerate, you know, the soothing quality of things like even listening to the sea and stuff. Which that does sound a little bit like, how can you get so much from it? But it absolutely does. And that power of nature for me is really strong. Sometimes just going outside and sitting on a bench for 10 minutes can just reset my kind of mood and, you know, the way I feel about things, because I just connect in with the sounds of nature, the colours around me, you know, what I can smell. And it just helps me to rebalance, I guess. And it's not something that I create. It's all been created for us. Yeah. You know, and that's quite a magical thing, that there is all this ability, you know, to go and connect with nature in some way. You know, even if you live in a built-up area, there will be a patch of green that if you just go and visit, if that's your thing, because that's the other bit. It's not everyone's thing, is it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that whole bit of nature and spirituality is really important to me. So the things like I talk about the crystals, you know, we joke about it all the time, don't we, Sam? But they come from the earth. They harness the earth's energy. You know, they, from a kind of tactile grounding perspective, to feel and hold them, it's quite calming for me. And then, you know, I know you're like, oh, and this is where everyone's different.
This is where we part ways.
This is, yeah.
No, I'm not trying to sort of piss on you for it. I'm like, it's not my cup of tea. Crystals, they look nice.
And if nothing else, take that, you know, you think about colour therapy, the fact that different colours spark different elements of your kind of brain and how you feel. Think about that in crystals. Actually, if picking up a red crystal, it's tactile, it's red, so it kind of gives you that sense of assertiveness, then go for it, you know.
I got interested a little bit in crystals when you told me that there's one that helps you attract money.
Citrine.
There you go. I need to buy one on Amazon.
I've already got one for you.
Awesome. So the plan to become rich and famous is still there.
Yeah. So I think it's just that bit of what helps soothe my soul, what helps me appreciate the kind of beauty in the everyday, what gives me a calmness and a sense of well-being. You know, I like to go swim in the sea. Some people are like, are you fucking crazy?
I love sea, especially when it's cold.
It's so awesome. Invigorating. You know, it clears your mind like nothing else. But again, it's about what's right for individuals. And I don't mind if people go, Sam, that's a load of rubbish. Do you know what? That's absolutely fine because it works for me. And really, that's what matters. I try not to push it down people's throats. I may occasionally mention the odd crystal or two, but it's not like I come to your desk and say, have you connected with nature today? It's that bit that it's about me being respectful that it works for me. Doesn't mean it works for other people. And I need to be okay with that as well, which I think is part of that spirituality element of be kind, be empathetic, be respectful of other people as well.
I struggle with the idea of spirituality because my first understanding of it, or my first, let's say, contact with it, were people who were so spiritual that they were almost floating in a fucking cloud.
I've not got to that state.
Yeah, trotting around on a fucking unicorn. And I don't like that. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that's where the reality sits, and maybe that's what it's about. But I personally like when somebody has that spiritual side to them, but it also is connected to, let's say, this reality. I really struggle connecting with people who are too airy-fairy, who are a little bit too woo, and almost, from my standpoint, a bit delusional. I understand where it comes from, and I can understand why they want to be there, but I don't want to be that, because I want to, if I engage in spirituality or anything else, I want it to help me connect with people more, and allowing me to operate within the world on a better level, rather than having to hide and living that sort of monk life, or living in a small bubble of people who understand that and fuck everybody else. And this guy cut me off in the traffic, fuck him, he's not spiritual, he must be a dickhead, or whatever. So I don't want to live that life. And that's why I struggled with it in the beginning, but I met different people. And what helped me engage with the subject is the idea of shadow self, which is idea not just from spirituality, but also from psychology. Mr. Jung again. There we go.
And Sam, don't get me wrong, I have road rage. So despite the calmness,
we need to go for a car ride together, because I can't imagine you raging. We have to do that.
I mean, my friends think it's hilarious. When I used to travel a lot with work, that's be our catch-up time, and literally I think they used to kind of bet how long before she'll be like hurling abuse at people. And we went down to Cornwall this weekend, and my friend drove, and I even hurled abuse for her when somebody was being a car knob. Yeah, it's just kind of like,
beep. Get out of the way.
Get alongside. I'll give him the look, and a bit.
My
God, Sam, it's all right. It's all right. So there's that bit, isn't there, that goes, we can practice lots of stuff, but actually we will all have a side to us. There'll be times when I will say something and I'll go, do you know what, that was really mean of me, or that was out of order for me to say it. And I guess that's the difference, is I can say it, but then I can also say, do you know what, that's not fair reflection, or that wasn't really a nice thing to say. That's how I justify it anyway. But yeah, I think we all have those two sides to us, don't we?
I stopped doing that when, and I drove for millions of miles. I used to do deliveries around London, so you have to be a different kind of crazy to do that. And there's always somebody, there's always a reason to be pissed off. But when I realized I'm actually just hurting myself, like anger is just poisoning your own body. I'm like, I've realized that, and I started letting go. And I've introduced something that I called fuck it day for myself. So legit. So when I found myself in the space where I would have a few stressful days because there's like pressure on deliveries and there's somebody cut me off and it all adds up, I would sort of spend a minute first to sort of prime myself. Like when those thoughts come up, when I get pissed off about something, I'll just say, fuck it and let go. So I have to practice that a few times. And then during the day, when I would feel that building because somebody just cut me off, or I need to I need to hurry up because the time of delivery, whatever, I would say, fuck it. And I've learned a little bit to let go. However stupid that might sound, it helped me to learn to let go in certain situations, because you're adding stress to yourself. It's not going to make you drive faster. I'm not going to get there faster. But not only that, being angry and pissed off, the cortisol starts working. Your brain doesn't function as well because it affects your cognitive functions. So you're more likely to start making stupid mistakes. Maybe you crash into somebody. Maybe you do the delivery and you mess something up. So I started realizing that there are no benefits, and I started letting go.
And I think it's back to asking yourself the question, why am I so angry?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think I get so angry. I have thought about it. Is because my whole bit about being respectful to other people, being respectful is about actually putting your indicator on, actually not about cutting me up and then slowing down in front of me, it's against my values of being respectful to other people. And so that's why I get so angry about it, because I'm like, how hard is it to put your indicator on? Sometimes people just do stuff because they're distracted or whatever,
No,
but actually, if you see someone on the phone, that's still disrespectful.
Yeah.
And again, it's back to that question of, why do we get so outraged about it? And I thought about it because it's like everyone experiences some sort of idiot on the road in the car, don't they? I like to think I'm not that idiot, but probably there's been times when I've just not looked quite properly and gone to pull out and gone, oh, sorry. And I think it's that bit, isn't it? And even though I know that's where it comes from, I will still do it. Not mastered the art of that one yet.
Soothe your soul in the moment.
It's quite instantaneous as well, isn't it? It often happens very quickly. It often has an impact where it makes your heart just go, ooh, oh, you need to break quick. So I think it's that whole quickness of it means I don't have the ability to think so quickly to say, reflex. Don't get road rage, Sam.
Yeah.
I've just gone, this is my reaction to your disrespect and putting me or putting somebody else at risk. Because I rage for people, in a different car. If I, if I see somebody else do something, I'm always like, look at that wanker on there. What the fuck are you doing? It's not exclusive to my car.
Wow. Have you ever had any spiritual experiences that could be considered out of the ordinary? That you're willing to share, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know if it's spiritual per se, but whether it's about that empathy and that being very perceptive and having that kind of intuition piece. But there are times when something won't feel quite right for me. Mm-hmm. And I may go, maybe I just need to pick the phone up to that person. Maybe I need to send them a message. And often they'll be like, Sam, it's just what I needed. Or I might just send a little hug gif or something like that, because there is something in me that says, not quite sure
a bit of
everything's
telepathy.
Right. And even though there may be no context to it, I might not have spoken to them for a couple of weeks or whatever, I'll just get an emotion that I think, And they're often like, oh, Sam, that's just what I needed right now. Or thanks for reaching out. How did you know? And so I don't know if it's spiritual, but yeah, I do get that. And sometimes I could just feel kind of stuff around people, and they'll be like, at a place that I used to work, there was a guy there, and he used to go, "You're some sort of witch, Sam, because it's like you look into my soul, and you have to look at me, and you know everything." But whether that's about being more perceptive around people, there's an element of that, I don't know. But sometimes it's hard to rationalise it. And I guess that's why you might say it's more spiritual, and how you kind of connected with something bigger than me and something bigger that's rational. So, yeah.
I kind of like where sort of the mainstream science is going, and sort of spirituality and those worlds, or religion, or however we want to call it, those two worlds were always far apart, I think. And I feel like we're going closer to the fact that those are coming closer together. Like if you consider quantum physics at the moment now, quantum mechanics and all that, it talks about how two particles being like miles apart can influence one another. And I feel like at certain point there will be a moment when one will explain the other, and it all starts making sense, and like spirituality, or that let's say the world that we cannot see is not going to be woo anymore. It's going to be a reality. And it's fascinating. It's just it's sort of interesting. Question, it just came to my mind. What do
That's a serious question.
Yeah, I love it. I love this question, and I love this subject, and that is my subject that sort of helps me evaluate in a way people that I meet, because some people look at me like I'm fucking crazy, and some people find that subject interesting. It's simulation theory. So do you know what simulation theory is?
Tell me again.
Okay, so simulation theory is a theory that we live in a simulated world. So almost like a computer simulation, and
Right.
there's it sort of branches out, in my opinion, in different directions. Some people think that it's a simulation created by aliens. Some people there's like a bigger being, whatever. But that we live in a simulated world, almost like Matrix. What do you think about that?
It's not something I connect with.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are here in this moment in time. What happens, but we can control an element of what happens. I would say I do believe in fate, but I do think we can impact our fate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I'm not sure it's something I connect with. I kind of think we're in a unique space and time at this moment in time. You know, and whilst it's not predetermined, there may be a path that we're all kind of on, but we can equally impact that path.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you think about the discussion we had earlier about how your childhood experiences don't have to define your experience as an adult.
Yeah.
I may well have been on a path, but I've consciously striven to go on a different path from the path that maybe I could have gone along.
I find it a very interesting subject to talk about, and it's very thought-provoking. And one of the more important comments that I've heard about it was from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's an astrophysicist from States. And he said this, like in the game, for example, when you have like an open world game, you can't see everything. As you move around, the world is created, so the graphic shows up, another forest comes up and whatnot. And he said that we cannot cross the boundary of speed of light, and we can theoretically get quite close, I think, but we can never get to the speed of light or faster. And the theory says that the universe is expanding at the speed of light. So he said, what if that limitation that we cannot get close to the speed of light, or we cannot cross the speed of light, was put on the simulation, so we cannot go beyond what has already been created?
Wow, that blows my mind a bit, Sam.
Doesn't it? I had the same reaction. I'm like,
yeah,
it's actually quite
Wow.
interesting, isn't it?
That does blow your mind though, doesn't it?
We didn't take any mushrooms, I promise. So yeah, I love that subject, and it splits people. Some people that I meet want to talk about it, and some people look at me, fucking hell, get away. Understandably.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I'll go away and reflect on that. I'm a little bit of a reflector. Whilst I'm quite comfortable in the moment throwing stuff out, I do, if there's something because it blows my mind. I need to think about that because it blows my mind. But back to everyone's different, Sam, and if that's, it's about accepting that you may not agree with it. So those people may not agree with what you're saying.
Absolutely.
You're allowed to have that opinion.
But even physicists don't agree with each other. That there's more theories. One last thing I want to talk about is boundaries. There is a really good quote from Mike Tyson. Some people love him, some people hate him. I don't care. He said, if you're a friend to everybody, you're an enemy to yourself. What do you think about that?
So, I think sometimes people can not be kind to themselves because they're so busy being kind to other people that they may not well put their own needs first when maybe they should do.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a bit of people pleasing in that sense. That's for you,
I'm
Sam.
the
And
grandmaster people pleaser in recovery.
And I relate to that too. I think it's all within our gift to be kind to everybody. But it's got to be genuine kindness and authentic kindness. And for me, but saying that, I would be kind to somebody that I didn't particularly like if I felt they were in a difficult place or they just needed some support. I would still be comfortable being kind to them and I would be authentically kind. So it's really interesting, isn't it? But I think it's easy to forget to be kind to yourself in that situation. And that's where your own worst enemy. Actually, it's okay. And I'm not good at this. If I'm in a bad place and somebody maybe wants some support and stuff and I'm kind of thinking, I'm not really in the right place, I'll still pull it out the bag and I'll probably be mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted by it all. And maybe the best thing for me to do is say, do you know what? I'm happy to support you. I'm not necessarily in the right place. Let's do a little bit of top line and let's come back to it. I would never do that. I never would want to, I don't think. I'd want to support. So even if I did feel a bit emotionally whacked out from it, I'd still want to do it. I don't know. It's quite a good question. See, it's made me start to think about things, hasn't it, in that moment?
For me, it more goes into, because I come from the place where like people pleasing was my big problem. And I feel like a lot of it sort of came together. So people pleasing, anxiety, drinking problems, all of that was bunched together for me to create a bigger problem. And I feel like that quote is an essence of people pleasing because you want to make everybody like you at the cost of your own well-being, your own happiness. You're almost selling yourself, your soul sometimes. Sometimes you're not being your genuine self just for that approval of other people. So you want to be friend with everybody, and at certain points you're an enemy to yourself because you're not your authentic self. That's where my mind goes when I hear that quote, and that's why I wanted to have it today because it just sort of hit me. I've heard it recently. And I think that's an essence of people pleasing. You try to make everybody happy, but then at the cost of your own happiness. You set yourself alight to warm other people. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And I think for me, because I experienced a time when there wasn't support or there wasn't that real love, and I guess if I see that somebody needs some of that, I kind of over compensate and think, oh, I can't let that person feel they're alone, or I can't let that person feel they can't reach out to support, even if maybe I'm not in that best place, because I go back to, I remember how that felt and I would never want anyone to feel like that. So it is people pleasing. But I think as well it comes from that place of I would never want anyone to feel that way when there could be some support or some love or some whatever way it's expressed there. And I also think sometimes there are times when maybe there are some people that don't particularly like you or you don't particularly like, but you can still respect them, and therefore if you respect them, you can still give support as well. But it can be difficult to do. And I would still do it where some people would be like, oh, sod it. I don't like them. Why the hell am I going to do that? I probably still would. Because for me, it's the right thing to do. So I guess it is people pleasing. But I guess it comes from quite a deep place for me, that desire to support in that way. Not that it's always right or as good for me. It's interesting, isn't it? That's really made me think that, Hassan. When I can't sleep tonight, you do realise.
I'm sorry.
As I'm turning through the world in my head.
Don't call me at 3 a.m. to shout at me. I have a busy day tomorrow. It's really interesting with people pleasing. And I didn't understand it for a long, long time, because even like when I did talks, I think I always said that when I was younger, I always just wanted people to get along. I couldn't understand why people have to argue. I didn't understand why, people have to fight and yada yada. I just wanted everybody to be one happy family. But then as I started maturing and I started, developing myself and understanding people a bit more, I've realized it's not possible for 9 billion people, or however we have many now, to everybody get along. And that's just nature of life. So I started letting that go a little bit more, and thinking about boundaries, which is also an interesting subject. And I think I recently realized that what we do wrong about boundaries is that we think about boundaries that we want to have for other people, but actually more important boundaries are the boundaries that we have for ourselves. And there's a guy, I can't remember his name, I follow him on Instagram. He's a recovering alcoholic and people pleaser, and he's coaching people in that areas now. And he said something very impactful for me recently, that boundaries are not, you don't have to have conversation with everybody in your life about your boundaries. It's how you show up in life, how you show up in those relationships. If you show up in a way that you want to be treated, if you almost project those boundaries, you won't have to fucking talk about them, because you will behave in a certain way, you will present yourself in a certain way that people naturally will see those boundaries in that. So that was interesting for me, because I always thought that when there's a boundary, you have to tell people, I don't like when you talk to me like that. Obviously, sometimes that's the case. If somebody calls your name and you're not really friendly with them, you don't want it to happen again, you should do that. But it really struck me, and it's so true. It's how you show up that present your boundaries.
I think that's a bit like, I've mentioned values, and not just values from like a company perspective, but actually what are the values that's important to you. You demonstrate that your values in your everyday. That's how you show up. That's how people, understand what's important to you.
Like indicators, for example. You said that's one of your top values. Somebody turns on their indicator.
It's a bit, you kind of, it's a bit like role modelling, isn't it, really? You role model what you want people to see, so they understand what's important to you and what's not important to you, But I would say that all of us have experienced a time when we think, maybe that I should have said something at that moment in time. Maybe I should have kind of set the expectation around something. And I get the bit about showing up. But I am going to kind of backtrack a little bit on that, Sam. Because one of the things that I often think is, when people have misunderstandings or clash, or something happens that you're outraged by, I go back to that. It's often not malicious. It's often about people think, feel and do in different ways. And so even though you may demonstrate that behaviour and that's how you show up, because it's so far removed from the way that they think, feel and do, they just can't see it. They just can't understand it. And so they don't respond to, this is how I'm showing up. This is me setting my expectations. This is me presenting my boundaries. They're just not getting it.
I don't know why, but my brain went political. So just look at left and right. They will never fucking.
And let's not talk about politics. It's not my thing.
No, but like if you look at the far left and far right, I think that's the problem. One side cannot understand the other, and vice versa. But let's not go to politics. Absolutely.
But that is the principle, isn't it? And when we don't understand it, and we don't seek to understand it, because that's the difference. We don't seek to understand it, then there will always be that misunderstanding, that lack of knowing that there's a boundary there, and the reason that boundary's there because we don't want to understand it, because it's so far removed from who we are, and we don't necessarily agree with it or align to it or think it's important, when actually for that other person it could be hugely important.
Absolutely.
You know, and sometimes it's simple, and I'm gonna, you know, sometimes it's simple little things about. I go back to respect. You might have guessed by now, respect's really important to me. It's funny, I have a bad habit of when I'll go and chat to people in the office and stuff, I kind of sit on the desk and perch myself on the desk. And somebody said to me, Sam, you always come and sit on my desk. Why don't you sit on the chair instead of the desk? You know, that's my space.
Mm-hmm.
I never even thought about it, Sam.
Yeah.
You know, and so sometimes we don't willfully do stuff. We just don't think about it. I think that's a really nice example. I was trying to think of an example of when I've done that, you know, and I try to be really mindful of people's space and boundaries and stuff. But the fact that they said that to me means I've never done it since.
Yeah.
And there's that bit about seeking to understand and sharing in the right way, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's a really good example.
Is that why you put a chair by your desk so people don't sit on your desk?
No, it's because when somebody sits on my desk, they're much higher than me, and I feel little. I feel belittled. I'm not having that.
I think I have sat on your desk, actually.
Have you?
Yeah.
Did I tell you
to
off?
The side of
No.
you. No, you didn't tell me off, but I think I have done it. I've thought about that now, you see. Now I'm overthinking it now. I'm like, oh, what else do I do? But
No,
I do
I'll
it.
probably tell you if I'm not happy, because we have a really good relationship. So I'll probably tell you. But
I'd always want you to tell me, Sam. I'd far rather you told me if you were uncomfortable with something.
Get the fuck off my desk.
Yeah, I'm like that, to be honest. Just tell me as it is.
Get out. Look, I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. We've been talking for quite a while, even though the time just flew by.
It has.
I don't know if you want to promote anything. Do you want people to find you? Maybe you want to do more podcasts and you want people to find you for more podcasts or whatever. Anything you want to get out there as a sort of last attempt?
Oh my goodness, Sam. I mean, I'm just pleased that I've got through it. And I guess I just hope that, you know, when people listen, that people can connect with some of the stuff and maybe if it's given people different perspective, you know, because I think we all need a bit of a different perspective.
Yeah.
So for me, I think back to that bit of sometimes I'm quite easily pleased, I guess, for me, you know, if people listening just go, there's just one thing that resonates with them, then I think we've done a good job.
Yeah, I
It's
think
been
so
really
too.
good.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
We've covered all topics as well.
Yeah, I feel like I still have some notes. I've missed a few.
We'll have to do another one, Sam.
Exactly, we will at some point.
The Sams.
Yeah.
The Sams podcast.
Well, we can start a podcast together called The Sams. 'Cause this one is mine.
This one is all
This one is
Sams.
slightly mental. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you, and I had a blast talking to you. Thank you so
too.
much.
Thank
All the
you.
best.